Okay, well, thank you everyone for attending tonight, and I'd like to welcome you to the June 7th, 2023 Monroe County Board of Zoning Appeals, and I'm calling this meeting to order. Ms. Behrman, would you kindly call the roll? Here.
Present.
Here.
I'm here. I can't hear you.
I can't either.
You had this trouble last time.
There was a photo shoot here, and they're trying, Tech Services is trying to get that up.
Aren't they great? We could hear her. Oh, there she is. There's Dee.
We're having a few technical difficulties, just to let everybody know. That happened, you were live
time.
before,
Last
a little bit earlier tonight, you were live, but the green light. Yeah.
We'll see.
Oh,
Oh,
now you're on.
now I'm loud and clear.
Okay, great.
I'm calling the roll.
Okay.
Margaret Clements.
Here.
Skip Daly.
Present.
Pamela Davidson.
Here.
Guy Loftman.
Here.
And Dee Owens.
Here.
That is 4 in person, 1 virtual, and that is a quorum.
Okay, could I request a motion to introduce the evidence?
Move to introduce the evidence.
Is there a second?
There's been a motion and a second to introduce the evidence. This will be, and I think someone, okay, I'm not hearing the feedback anymore. The Monroe County zoning ordinance as adopted and amended. The Monroe County Comprehensive Plan as adopted and amended. The Monroe County Subdivision Control Ordinance as adopted and amended. The Monroe County Plan Commission Rules of Procedure, this would be the Monroe County Board of Zoning Appeals Rules of Procedure as adopted and amended in cases that were legally advertised and scheduled for the hearing on tonight's agenda.
Is there a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve.
All right,
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay,
I got Guy as a second. I will call the roll to introduce the evidence. Skip Daly,
Yes.
Pamela Davidson,
Yes.
Guy Loftman,
Yes.
Dee Owens,
Yes.
and Margaret Clements.
yes. And now, on our agenda is the minutes from the March 1st, 2023 meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
Also move to approve those minutes.
Is there a
Second.
Great.
There's been a motion and a second to adopt the minutes for March 1st, 2023. I'll call the roll. Pamela Davidson,
Yes.
Guy Loftman,
Yes.
Dee Owens,
Yes.
Margaret Clements,
Yes?
and Skip Daly.
I retain my objection to voting on the minutes as opposed to the chair approving them, such as my motion back in August of 2022.
So that motion passes 4-0 to 1.
Okay, moving on, is there a motion to approve tonight's agenda as amended, keeping in mind that the first several cases under new business, the first 6 cases have been continued by staff? Is there a
I'll move to approve tonight's agenda.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second to approve tonight's agenda as amended. I'll call a roll. Guy Loftman,
Yes.
Dee Owens,
Yes.
Margaret Clements,
yes?
Skip Daly,
Yes.
and Pamela Davidson.
Yes.
Motion
And we have
passes
one
5-0.
item under administrative business, Mr. Schilling.
Thank you. The Board of Zoning Appeals received an unfavorable ruling on the
I don't
judicial.
think that the mic's picking you up.
I can hear.
The Board of Zoning Appeals received an unfavorable ruling in the Bedford Recycling Judicial Review case, and the legal department is requesting authority to file a motion to correct errors.
I'd move to file a motion to correct errors.
Second?
There's been a motion and a second. A vote in favor is a vote to file a motion to correct errors. I will call the roll. Margaret Clements?
Yes?
Skip Daly?
Yes.
Guy Loftman?
Yes.
Dee Owens?
Yes.
And Pamela Davidson?
Yes.
Great, that motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. So we're moving on to item number 7 under new business, and that's VAR-23-17, and that's the Zoo Bay side yard setback variance to Chapter 833 concerning 5.1 plus or minus acre parcel in Benton Township, South Township, Section 31 at 5415 East James Road. Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Margaret. This request is a one design standards variance from the, sorry, that should be side yard setback, to permit the placement of a solar array within a 30-foot side yard setback. The variance was triggered by a residential electrical permit, R-23-238. During the review of this building permit, it was found that the proposed solar array is encroaching into the side setback. If the design standard variance is approved, the petitioner will be able to continue with the electrical permit and comply with all zoning and building codes. If the design standards variance is denied, the petitioner will be required to place the structure in a place that meets the side yard setback requirement and comply with all zoning and building codes. So here we have a location and site conditions map that is also in the packet. Here we have aerial imagery of the petition site. The red circle area there represents the location of the proposed structure. And these are some site photos, directional north and south, respectively. East and west. This is the site plan that was submitted on behalf of the property owner. SolarCam is the solar company who provided these designs. As you can see here in the right-hand side picture, they are indicating that the solar array will be placed within 10 feet of that side setback. Not included in the packet, this was received earlier today by the petitioner, the property owner, to amend the site plan to include a 15-foot setback from the side, but that does not meet the 30-foot side setback requirement for the RE 2.5 zone. These are construction plans also provided by SolarCam. Also received today by the petitioner's representative are examples of the proposed structure, and I apologize for the grainy images, but they were quite small, so. This is the petitioner's letter to the BZA requesting the side yard setback. And this is also included in the packet. And then received earlier this afternoon, the petitioner's representative also submitted a letter for the BZA members And I believe that he would like to expand on this letter when it's his time to speak. But I'll leave it up on the screen for just a moment. Okay. This is a letter of support received by staff on June 5th, 2023. It is a letter of support from the property owner's neighbor, Jeff Franklin, and I'll leave this on the screen for just a little bit. So staff does recommend denial of the side yard setback from Chapter 833. The reason being practical difficulties have not been met, specifically C, which states cannot be reasonably addressed through the redesign or relocation of the development, building, or structure existing or proposed.
Okay, do members of the Board of Zoning Appeals have questions for staff?
I do.
Yes, Ms. Owens.
Thank you. I'd like to know about if, when the site visit was performed, if they paid careful attention to where the trees are. Putting in solar like this has to be done very carefully, or else it's just worthless. So if it were forced to be moved from the area that was chosen by SolarCam and by the property owner, then a bunch of trees would have to be cut down, and we generally don't like that either. So did you take a look at the trees?
Back to your site plan.
Yeah, D, so there does appear to be some open space. If you can, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but on the southwestern portion of the property, that's really the justification for the denial of the setback.
Okay, and that is across 5 acres. You can't run solar that far across. It would be unbelievably prohibitive cost-wise. The solar has to be near the house.
Okay. Any other questions, Ms. Owens?
No, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Loftman?
I've just glanced at this letter from Mr. Bogus, and he brings up the question that struck me is, this doesn't seem like, offhand, this doesn't seem like a structure. As he says, it seems more akin to a carport. It doesn't enclose any as I understand the design, it doesn't enclose any space. It just sits in space, and the wildlife can still move in and out underneath it. Why is it this considered what is it that makes this considered a structure as opposed to some other category?
I know staff made a determination several years ago when we started seeing these come through the office as to how to deal with them. Some of them are quite tall, some of them are larger footprint than 120 square feet. So we kind of generally look at these standalone solar panels as a structure that needs to abide by setbacks. If it was a roof-mounted solar system, we confirm that those are not higher than the roof line, and then we would generally give that a waiver. But because of this one, and usually the if it's over 120 square feet, we do classify that as a structure, same as a carport. We issue variances for carports sometimes, as well as permits.
That seems
And
logical.
in the world of insurance, it's considered a structure as well. Okay. Insurably, it's considered a structure. That's the.
Okay.
I agree that's no surprise, but the insurance law says what do we replace if it burns down, and zoning law says what do we look at? But but you've addressed my question, and I appreciate that. It's the practice, but there's nothing specifically in any of our ordinances that mandates that, but it's the interpretation you all have given this over the years and are continuing to give it. And I'm not saying you should reverse that. I just didn't know if there was something in the ordinance that was defining this. Sounds like no, but this is our practice.
Right. A perspective is that if we didn't classify this as a structure and they could put it right up to the property line, some of these do get kind of tall and could be shading out a neighbor, or kind of feel like it would have that looming effect over the property line. So that's why we kind of also treat it as a structure.
Great, thank you. That helps me orient.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, then the petitioner, the petitioner's representative has 15 minutes to make the case to us. And if you would kindly come to the podium, sign in, and then I'll swear you in. Would you raise your right hand? And do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? And would you kindly state your name? Thank you. And so we're eager to hear your reasons for your variance.
Sure. Maybe I can start backwards and talk about the difficulties not being that issue.
Is this being broadcast? I don't.
I cannot hear. Thank you.
Is the green light on your microphone? If you would push the right button, the one with the.
Testing, 1, 2, there we go. Okay,
Thank
sorry.
you. Thank you.
So if I could deal with the second issue of difficulties not being met. I've had 3 different solar companies come out to the property and evaluate it. And I've also had the help of Daryl Bogus, who's here. He's a volunteer with 2 solar advocacy agencies. And you know, they bring out these meters that can measure, because there are a lot of trees on this property, so there's not a lot of choice about where a solar panel could go. And this particular clearing is at the high ground on the lot, so it has the best chance of getting some sun above the trees. And with the meter, it seemed like it would be okay. You know, not perfect, but the southwest corner of the lot would really be an eyesore to the whole neighborhood. I don't think anybody would be happy about putting it in there, so that wasn't considered. Plus, it would be extremely expensive, as mentioned, to run the wire, and you know, you'd be digging up a lot of tree roots to go through all that yard. The other clearing just north of the southwest corner is a possibility, but that's where the septic field is. So this location is really the only ground location. You know, could put it on the roof, but that's not really ideal because the main house is a geodesic dome roof, so that's going to be a big problem. And the garage has kind of an octagonal shaped roof, so that, you know, it would be expensive and just not ideal in the opinion of the companies that have come out. The solar cam is a very minimal structure that rotates 4 times a year and seems very interesting. So yeah, I really think that's the only option if I'm going to install solar. As to the setback, there's been a lot of confusion in this process. In January, I was told that the setback would be 15 feet, and then in April, that was confirmed by a different person from the planning department in communication with SolarCam, and it turned out they were looking at 804 rather than 833. And so I've done a lot of reading on this, and with Daryl's help, have I'd like to just note something, that the accessory structure definition in Code 800, this is Chapter 808, page 3, means a structure with a floor area of 400 square feet or less, et cetera, et cetera. Examples of accessory structures are detached garages, carports, storage sheds, and others. And then if we jump to Chapter 833, page 19, Table 33-5, it talks about some exceptions to the general bulk controls applicable to each zoning district. And type of structure or use encroachment, detached garages, carports, and storage sheds, the side yard would be 5 feet. So I'm not even sure why variance is necessary if I'm understanding that part of the code correctly. But if I am indeed understanding that incorrectly, then I'm asking for the variance to place this not 10 feet, but 15 feet from the north property line. Also, there's a tree stand along that property line. So it pretty much shelters from view to the adjacent lot. And Jeff Franklin has kindly provided a letter of support along those lines. So yeah, that's my request.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Zube. And I will ask that my fellow members of the Board of Zoning Appeals if they have any questions for you. Ms. Davidson?
I do have a question. 120 feet, how many posts with the panels that will adjust 4 times a year? How big will that field be in terms of number of those solar structures?
Well, it's on 4 posts that screw into the ground, kind of a triangular structure to an access point. And then there'll be 18 panels, 9 by 2. And I believe that the dimensions of that are 15 feet by 33 feet. You know, it'll never be straight up. It'll be at some kind of an angle. So that's where we're, like Jeff mentions, 23 feet in his letter of support. That would be 15 feet from the property line plus 7 or 8 feet to the middle of that structure.
Thank you.
And what is the total square footage of the panels you're describing?
Of the panels?
Of the structure, we'll call it a structure.
I'm not sure exactly how to answer that. Of the panel itself would be 33 times 15. I don't know if someone has a calculator. But, you know, the footprint on the ground is, you know, not very much. It's 33 feet by, I don't know, 3 or 4 feet maybe.
Okay.
Only where the triangle reaches the base.
Okay, so I think Mr. Daly said that would be 495 square feet.
Thank you, Mr. Daly.
Thanks for your quick math. Yes. So,
Thank you.
yes. Any other questions for Mr. Zube? I don't see if Dee Owens has her hand raised or not. Okay, so we will hear from members of the public who are in favor of your request and members of the public who are opposed, and then you will have a 5-minute chance to rebut.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So if there are members of the public here in the room or online, please come to the podium, sir. Would you kindly sign in and state your name, and then I'll swear you in. Yes, your name, sir?
Daryl Boggess,
And Daryl.
Boggess, Boggess.
Okay, Mr. Boggess, would you kindly raise your right hand, and do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, thank you. And you'll have 3 minutes.
3. Okay. I'm here as a friend of the petitioner and also as a volunteer with a nonprofit, Solar Indiana Renewable Energy Network. For several years, we've made public presentations around the city, the county, and several neighbors on Kings Road, which is a pretty short road out in the county, have solar. The home right behind him, and some of them started small back when it was expensive. They've since expanded. Now it's less expensive, but most of them put them on a rooftop because that's where they have sun exposure, but they don't have a geodesic roof like he's got. They have a flat roof, like it's real simple. But in his case, he really doesn't have very many choices. He puts it where the sun hits the ground, or he tries to cobble something up on this weird shape on the roof, or he puts it out close to the street. The neighbor's going to complain about it because it's visible, or he puts it on his septic system, which is really not a safe thing to do. So this is the best practice location to put it. And I drove out there yesterday just to remind myself what it looks like in the summer. There's so many trees and bushes, and the house is set back. It's up on a hilltop. You can't even see it much from the road. And like he said, there are trees behind the property line between him and the neighbor. His neighbor's house, likewise, is set on the other end of the property. It's practically invisible. So,
Well, thank you for that testimony, Mr. Bogus, and also for your letter.
is that my 3 minutes already?
You still have a minute.
Okay, one more minute.
Okay.
There's a small picture, which is his. The big picture is the world, the country, the state, the county, the city. We got a big time problem. If you don't believe it, look at the weather map for New York City and Philadelphia this week. It's terrible. So people need to remember that decisions here affect more than us. I've had solar on our home for 12 years. It produces quite a bit of electricity. When I first got it, state of Ohio sent me this certificate identifying my home address as a renewable energy resource generating facility for the state of Ohio, because Duke has meters, Duke Energy has meters that measure what comes in, we pay for it, what goes out. Since they changed the meter, I've been surprised. More energy goes to the grid than comes from the grid in my house. So the technology is changing. We will be able to provide energy for emergencies with solar systems remotely. This is important.
Thank you, Mr. Bogus. Thank you for your work on this issue. Are there other members of the public who are here in person or online on Zoom or on the telephone who would like to speak on this issue? Please make yourself known by coming to the podium, raising your virtual hand on Zoom, or pressing *9 on your telephone. There's no one? Okay, are there members of the public who are here who are in opposition to this petition? If so, please make yourself known by coming to the podium, raising your virtual hand on Zoom, or pressing *9 on your telephone. So there's no one who would like to speak on this issue, and as such, they're not opposing. So Mr. Zube, I don't think you have a need for rebuttal because nobody's contradicted what you've said. So with that being said, I'd like to come back to the members of the Board of Zoning Appeals for further discussion and/or a motion. Yes, Ms. Davidson.
In terms of practical difficulties, the testimony that we've heard has said there's really no other place to place this. They've moved it back from 10 feet to 15 feet, which we totally appreciate. We now know that the base is smaller than the panels will be sticking out. We know that the neighbors are not opposed, and of course, solar energy is the way of the future. We know those things. So in terms of that, I think factually, this request doesn't pose difficulties in terms of slow floodplain, the normal things we look at. So I'm thinking the fact that you really can't place it anywhere else on the property. As a person who's lived on my property for decades, there's no sun on the deck anymore virtually, so I understand how that moves and grows. So I want to say that the facts pretty much support solar installation there.
So there are matters that are peculiar to the site that, and also to the house, such as the roof, that support your argument that this should be approved,
And the septic field.
and the septic
Of the
field.
septic field. The fact that there have been 3 companies out there, and I assume they've all said the same thing. I neglected to ask that. I see that you're nodding. I would think they've all, so that's 3 experts who know how to assess the terrain.
Okay, well, anybody else have any other items for discussion? Ms. Owens?
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think that this is exactly why the Board of Zoning Appeals exists, is to look at what's going on and what's special and why should the rules that have been made not necessarily apply. In addition to the fact, as Pam said, that we want to encourage solar. We want to encourage this sort of stuff. We don't want to cut down a bunch of trees just so that we can put up solar panels that almost, you're trying to save trees with solar panels. Well, that doesn't make sense either. Having said that, if there's no one else there that has anything to say, I'd like to make a motion
Okay,
that we approve variance 23-17, the Zoo Bay side yard setback variance to chapter 833.
is there a second?
Second.
Okay,
All right, there's been a motion and a second. A motion or a vote in favor is a vote to approve the side yard setback variance. Margaret Clements?
yes?
Skip Daly?
I will vote yes, but I would also like to say, I believe this should be a catalyst, if the commissioners are listening, to appoint an intern or somebody to look through the code and to see how solar needs to be addressed specifically in this day and age and how it applies to our county ordinance in addition. So with that being said, hopefully they're listening and will take some action. I will vote yes.
All right, Guy Loftman?
Yes.
Dee Owens?
Yes.
And Pamela Davidson?
May I ask just a point of clarification? The original documents had a different setback and they adjusted it to the 15 feet. So I assume, is that right? Am I correct about that?
Yes.
So I assume we're voting on the 15 feet, as far back as possible. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, then yes.
All right. Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Zubay. Thank you. Okay, we're moving on to items 8, 9, and 10 on our agenda, and that's VAR-23-18A, Barker minimum lot size variance to Chapter 804, VAR-23-18B, Barker front yard setback variance, and then VAR-23-18C, Barker buildable area floodplain variance to Chapter 804 concerning 1.19 plus or minus acre parcel in Benton North Township, Section 34 at 9390 North Darrett Road. And so, Ms. Crecelius, if you'd please review this with us.
Absolutely, thank you. Okay. So as you stated, the petition site is located in Benton Township. So the petitioner submitted permit R-23-288 for a 2-story home fronting Lake Lemon. The proposed structure has a 721 square foot south-facing second-story elevated deck that would encroach 14 feet into the 25-foot setback. If a structure on a property zoned suburban residential does not meet all setback requirements, then a minimum lot size variance is also required. So since the property is suburban residential, this zoning district requires a 1 acre minimum and the petition site is 0.17 acres. So additionally, the floodplain limits have been delineated on the plot plan. The base flood elevation for this area is 635 feet 1.1. So using the Indiana Department of Natural Resources best available flood data, this area, almost the entire property is identified as a special flood hazard area. Under Chapter 804 of the zoning ordinance, structures are not allowed on land that does not meet buildable area, and area that is classified as special flood hazard area is considered not buildable. So we'll look at this a little bit more in detail, but a quick summary of the 3 variance requests. So variance 18A is for that minimum lot size because they don't meet all developmental standards. So if they could meet all standards, a minimum lot size would not be required. Since they do need that front setback and a buildable area variance, the minimum lot size requirement of meeting 1 acre is triggered. Variance 18B is the setback variance for the elevated second-story deck, encroaching 14 feet into the front yard setback of 25 feet. And then variance 18C is for buildable area from the special flood hazard area. Okay, so the petitioner has demonstrated with a certified plot plan that all site disturbance will be above the regulatory base flood elevation. The area is still considered that special flood hazard area and does require a floodplain development permit. Should all these variances be approved, a residence totaling 4,851.5 square feet would be approved. This includes livable and non-livable space, porches, and decks. So area that is the entire footprint of the structure. So an illustration, a rendering of the proposed home is on screen. So this would be looking, let's see, northeast at the proposed residence. So looking as if you're from the lake, looking at the home. This is the rear of the house with that second-story deck you can see. So the deck is 53 feet by 14 feet, totaling 721 square feet. A setback from a lake is considered a front setback and is 25 feet. So the deck would be encroaching 14 feet into the 25-foot setback, so that would be an 11-foot setback from the property boundary if approved. So this next rendering is a side view of the proposed home. So just for reference, under Chapter 804, a patio that is under 30 inches tall would not necessarily be considered a structure and would be allowed to encroach into setbacks. We have seen this scenario with a neighboring property to the southeast, and they pursued a deck that was under 30 inches. So I'm just going to run through a few site photos here. These are a little older. So there was a residence on site that was removed. So we're looking at this tan structure that's kind of farther away. Oops, back. As you can note, there are very small lots in this area. So again, this lot size is 0.17 acres. Just as a note, there is an approved septic that is permitted off-site in a utility easement, so farther to the north. So the petitioner has provided a written commitment to address some concerns. We've included this in the packet, and we've included this into the staff recommendation. I'll get to those conditions of our recommendation here in just a moment. Just one small note that the condition, the commitment does state buildable area from 15% slope. So the buildable area is just, again, for that special flood hazard area. So for the 3 variances, the first 2 are listed here. So we are recommending, staff recommends a denial of variance VAR 2318A for minimum lot size. Again, this is only required because the front setback variance is being pursued. The reasoning is that the home could be redesigned to meet the setback requirements, making the minimum lot size variance request moot. And the same reasoning for the front yard setback Either the house could be redesigned to meet the setback requirements, or the porch deck could be redesigned to be under 30 inches or meet setback requirements. The third and final variance recommendation is from the buildable area SFHA variance. So we are recommending approval of this with the following conditions. So the first is that they record the petitioner's proposed written commitment after it's been reviewed by county legal and within 30 days of variance approval. Number two is that the petitioner edit the written commitment to include the revision or to include the review of the erosion and drainage plan through a grading permit application submission. So they are proposing, and under that commitment, to have erosion and to have an erosion and drainage plan. So really this number two condition is recommending that we review that under a grading permit process. And then number three is that prior to the start of construction, a licensed engineer or surveyor should clearly mark the construction limits with respect to the city of Bloomington property lines, the base flood elevation contour, and that planning staff inspect those boundaries and the installed erosion control measures prior to the start of construction. And four, that an as-built survey, including an elevation certificate, would be required prior to the certificate of occupancy release. Does anybody have any questions?
Do my colleagues have questions for staff?
As I read these documents, have I got this right, that the house itself is not a problem, it's the deck violates the setback rule, and if they did not build a deck but a patio, they wouldn't have a problem because that's what the neighbor did. Did I get that right?
Mostly. So the minimum lot size variance would be required just because of the buildable area. Because the whole lot is technically flood hazard area, it's required. That front setback variance, they could redesign, and that wouldn't be required.
If they redesigned it, they could make it a smaller house. Can they make it a house this size without, on the footprint, can they keep the footprint and just move it closer to the road?
The deck is the only thing that's encroaching into a setback. The second story rear deck is the only thing. So the rest of the home and the front porch all fits within setbacks.
Yeah, but if you look at the certified plot plan, one corner of the structure butts up to the other setbacks and there's no wiggle room. And I don't see how they could, adjust it.
Okay, thank you.
I can't see if Ms. Owens has her hand raised or, no? Okay. Well, with that being said, if the petitioner or the petitioner's representative, Mr. Carmen, it's good to see you.
Mike Carmen, representing petitioner Scott Barker. Would you go ahead and go to those slides and have the first one up there, please? Scott Barker, petitioner, is here also, and depending on how well I cover a couple points.
Mr. Carmen, would you move the mic a little closer?
All right, let's do this. All right, depending on how well I cover a couple points, Scott is likely to have some additional comments to make or subject to your questions as well. So I want to just kind of pick up with your discussion there at the end, particularly Pam's. It really is an issue of the deck and the deck only, because the structure as proposed needs nothing. Now, I guess I disagree with the staff's view of the minimum lot size issue, because the issue is that would be a problem but for the deck, but it doesn't meet minimum lot size. You've dealt with this issue I don't know how many times. Existing lots of record long before these standards of minimum lot size were defined. So, I mean, it's just the way it is, and you've repeatedly reproved those variances because there was no choice. But with regard to this one, I want to dispose of variance standards first. The first two gets very little comments and none really in the staff report, but the issue of what I call the first one being public health safety, that general one, and the second one would be the adverse impact on adjacent properties, use, and values. Those are both not issues, and the easiest way you find that is there are 5 letters of support It's all the immediate neighbors. There's only one property to the south, that'd be the Tishner property. There's letter support from the Tishners. And then the next 4 properties north and kind of northwest of this property, the adjacent property, the next several in line, everybody is issued a letter of support for this. If there was an adverse impact on their use and value, they wouldn't be supporting this. If there were public health, safety, moral issues of that first standard that you need to find, they wouldn't be supporting this. So those two, it comes down to, as you always, or almost always come down to, is the practical difficulties. And so what are those? To be clear, the patio, we'll call it a patio or a deck on the ground if you want. A flat surface, can't be more than 30 inches high above grade, could be built. Now, it would have to be a layered or tiered structure because you have some slope issues and have to stay no more than 30 feet in height above grade throughout the expanse of it. So we end up with a patio or deck that goes a few feet and has to step down, goes a few feet and has to step down, so that no portion of that is more than 30 inches above grade. It's not particularly useful, it's not particularly attractive, it certainly is not desirable to have multiple levels of a patio like that. So elevating it to a deck that's several feet above grade eliminates that. It gives you a flat level surface. It takes it well above the flood level of any line, 635 line, the 640 line, it doesn't matter. It's well above everything. And what is the impact of doing that? It's post-construction. It's, I say by hand, and that was the commitment by hand. Now, by hand actually means a power auger, but it's a hand-operated one, not bringing a piece of equipment down on the slope to do that. But you dig the post holes, you pour your concrete, you set your post, and everything else is up and around the ground. That's almost the same thing, and probably less than what you have to do to put the patio in. Because the patio is going to require multiple support posts at every place you have to change the level of the patio to keep it within that 30-inch above grade limitation. There are very practical problems with trying to do a patio, and yet you're on lake property, and the desire to have that sit outside available. And what Scott could talk better about, but I'll just comment on it, is first of the 4 slides, we talked about front yard, and I know you know, but just as a reminder, front yard in this case means the lakeside, because we have the double front yard. We have that entrance level from the drive entrance is a front yard. Then we have the lakeside, which is front yard. There's no true rear yard on these kind of properties. But you see the existing structure there, the photograph on the left is what's there now. You enter, and with the new structure, you would still enter the main level of the property at grade. No steps up or down. We're trying to match the deck to that level. You want to walk out onto the deck from your main living area. If we go down, even to a patio, if that could be done, then you're walking out on that patio from the basement. And now you can see here, this existing structure has the garage at that lower level. The proposed new structure would have also garage. Part of the basement level would be garage, part of it would be a couple bedrooms. But still, you'd be walking out onto that deck or patio, whatever you want to call it, from that grade level through a basement, either through a bedroom or from a garage. The desire and the usability of that deck or patio, whatever it's going to be, is to be able to walk out onto it from the main living area, from right off that's the upper level. That's where we want the deck to be placed, at that upper level. Those practical difficulties of usability. So the question will inevitably come for you, I would think, and I think Mr. Laughlin's already there a little bit as well. Why don't you just shrink the size of the house and move the house back, and then get your deck on your house, but it's back. There's not a lot of room. And the comment was, yes, this structure is going to extend to the permitted limits, side yard setback, the front from the street side or setback, and it's going to be pushing up to that. But there are good reasons for that. Scott can talk in a couple comments. You can see there, he's married, has three children, 13 grandchildren. He has no desire to build a house on the lake, and there's no bedroom for the grandchildren or for the children to come visit. I mean, there are some very practical problems. So, this is just the reality of it. I mean, any of you, if you're doing anything comparable to this, you'd be looking for a house to meet reasonable guest requirements to allow your family to to come visit and stay with you, and that's what he's doing. The house is being designed with several bedrooms for that purpose. A lot of grandchildren are going to be wanting to come down to see Grandma and Grandpa at the lake. Would you go to the next slide, please, Ann? Just some comments. I mean, can be a little bit misleading if you're not careful. Now, our numbers on the square footage are a little bit under 2,000 on both floors, but we took the square footage, Scott took the square footage off the building plans. I'm not sure, but I would suggest the difference of 150 or a couple hundred square feet is not a make or break issue for you on this, but we think the structure is a little bit less than that. You know, to summarize, the structure is 4,851 feet, means you're counting the deck, you're counting, as you can see on there, the covered porch. We don't usually count those things when we're talking about the square footage of a structure. The porches, decks, patios, they are what they are, but we don't usually think. So I don't want you to get overly concerned with 4,800 square feet, but I think that's misleading in the sense that covers the deck, the porch, and actually what is going to be unfinished from a living standpoint. It's going to be garage area on that lower level too. Next slide, please, Ann. Sometimes we get concerned about neighbors, and this is one of the staff slides I just put up here separately to be able to find it quickly. But it's hard to see the color lines, I understand that, but the red line that's struck on there shows you the relative position of this structure versus the neighbor on either side. And you can see the red line takes it across. They are not one in front of the other, one set way back. It's consistent with placement on the lot relative to the structures on either side of it. The petitioner property on the south, which would be to the right on this one, is a work in progress and a construction issue. That was actually a variance she did about a year ago. So the placement of the home is consistent with the placement of properties on either side. I'm going to watch my time there. And then the deck projecting out from that. And you see the red line actually cuts through the deck on a bit of an angle, but even part of the deck would not project out any further than the properties on either side. And again, those are property owners, both who have given letters of support, who have seen the plans. Their letters say basically, see your plans, great addition to the neighborhood, go for it, get it done. Next slide, please, Ann. So this is existing property now. That's the one that's circled in red to the right. That's the existing property. Existing property there to the left, which would be to the west, directional wise. You can see what it's got the screen porch. And so the concept of having some projection for usability, taking advantage of the lake view, even that neighbor recognized them when that house was built some years ago. Would suggest that you can find that you can find and should find practical difficulties, but it's not with the structure, the house. It's with the ability to even put the deck and have that outside facility to use, because it doesn't work well having to match no more than 30 inches above grade when we're going to have a little bit of a slope there, which means you move a few feet and the slope has gone down, you've got to tear your deck to keep it at no more than 30 feet high. And that's a very awkward construction, not a very desirable to use at all. And we can resolve that practical difficulties and achieve this outdoor sitting area through the elevated deck. I would ask for the variance.
Thank you. Thank you. Is Mr. Barker going to speak? And if you please come in, and I do need to swear you in, and you need to sign in. So if you could hold the timer. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And if you would kindly sign in, and then we'll, I think there is about 4 minutes left. 4 minutes and 37, 4:46 minutes
Yeah,
left.
could you go back a couple slides, if you would? Just one point I want to make on the square footage. The basement itself, it's really only 1,000 feet of living space.
I'm sorry, sir, but I don't hear you through the mic. Can you bend it towards you a little bit more?
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
That's better. Thank you.
Yeah, the basement is 2,000 square feet, but half of the basement is a 3-car garage and a utility room. So 1,000 square feet of the basement is that. There's 1,000 square feet of living space in the basement. So in total living space for the house is around 3,000 square feet. So I just want to make sure it's, when I saw the 4,800, I'm going, wow, that's a big house, but it's not really, the house is not 4,800 square feet. So can you go to the next slide, please? Yeah, and I think Mike made a good point. What's been recommended was to make the house smaller to accommodate the deck. If I were to do that, you know, the house now is 38 feet deep by 53 across. So if I was to make the house smaller to accommodate the 14-foot deck, the depth of my house would go from 38 to 24. That would be a real narrow house. It's about the same size, you know, as 24 feet is the normal depth of a two-car garage. It'd be a really narrow house. So it wouldn't be very realistic to do that. And it would make the house set back farther than my neighbor's houses. Mine would be way set back behind my neighbor's houses, which would be kind of strange as well. Next slide, please. And then I just wanted to make a point that the first story deck that I'm proposing will be at the same height as my neighbor's deck. So it's not going to be higher than their deck. It's going to be the same height as the deck of the house right next door. Even though you hear elevated deck, sounds like it's real high, it's the same height as the neighbor's deck right next door. Versus the other proposal was to make it a basement deck, which would be much lower than theirs. So, first point is I do have 13 grandchildren, just had number 13. So we do have a lot of family functions. We currently live on Lake Lemon. I live in a 1,000 square foot house now, and you can imagine it's pretty tight space when you have all the family over. So looking to build a house that I can accommodate for social get-togethers with my family. So I had one other point. Yeah, I just want to summarize, you know, the house itself is within the setbacks. It is totally the deck that's outside. And, you know, the effort to build the deck, I've built many decks in my lifetime. To build this deck, it's going to require 5 holes in the ground that are 8 inches wide, 30 inches deep. Minimal land disturbance. And it would be the same disturbance for a deck on the lower level. It's the same, no difference. In fact, if I did a concrete pad, that would be much more disturbing than the deck I'm proposing. Or if I did a paver system, that would be much more disturbing to the ground than the 5 posts in the ground. So thank you for considering my request.
Thank you, Mr. Barker. I'm going to ask my colleagues if they have questions for the petitioner or the petitioner's representative. Yes, Mr. Loftman.
Well, Mr. Daly had.
Oh,
I think
Mr. Daly, sorry.
Madam Chair, I actually, if it's not out of turn, I have a quick question that might influence anything future here, or a point of clarification for staff. Would 804-2 subsection B, the 6-foot additional feet allowed for horizontal on porches, would that apply to this?
I don't believe porches is included under that section. It lists things like awnings.
Steps and porches non-enclosed. I mean, that's what it says in front of me.
I think we've always kind of thought of porches as things that are, well,
I think there's been ambiguity as to what to call this regardless, but
it requires, I mean, we consider it a structure. It does require a permit if someone was wanting to build a structure, you know, something that's over 30 inches tall. I can pull up the ordinance and.
Well, fire escapes is covered under here, and I don't know how this would differ with the height and with the, I just think there's an extra 6 feet that the county ordinance allows. So we're even talking less than 11.
What's the sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see in chapter 804 where porches are granted an extra 6 feet encroachment into the setback, we're going to look up the definition of porch and see if it's in here.
To me, the siding of the house
Yeah.
within the setback seems pretty parsimonious. It seems to me like that is a perfect siding for what you plan to do, you know, but they're checking into this definition in chapter 804 about porches.
I don't have a definition for
Okay.
porch, but
Mr. Schilling has
we
it.
have a dictionary version of porch. And we are allowed to do that under chapter 800. So legal definition of porch. Porch or deck means an unenclosed floor surface contiguous to a building that is suitable for use by an occupant and supported above the ground on at least two opposing sides by an adjacent structure and or posts, piers, or other independent supports. A porch or deck may be covered or uncovered. So in 804, it does say uncovered porches are allowed a 6-foot encroachment. So if we do take that into account, then we're still needing another 8-foot setback variance to encroach
Okay.
into that full 14 feet.
Okay, so with that in mind, it's a reduction of the requested setback. But do members here of the Board of Zoning Appeals have questions? Yes, Mr. Lockman,
Yeah, could we see the slide that's got the red line?
the drawing of the,
What, right before
The,
this?
just before, someplace I
before
think
this.
before
Yeah.
this.
the
It's got the
siding.
red line between the corners of the houses.
Yeah, the plot plan.
Yeah,
It's one
Go back. Yeah,
There
right
it
there.
is.
Yeah.
there we go.
The subject property is the one, the lower one on
It's
this.
the one in the blue box, the blue
It's the
box,
blue
the middle of those three, the middle.
Is none of these three.
No, it's the blue box. The house is the
Yeah,
blue
okay.
box.
Now, does the blue line include the deck?
No, the green
No.
line is the deck.
The green line is the deck, the green square is the deck.
Proposed structure is this blue line. Red line is oriented with the structure on either side. Green line is hard to see, is right here.
Okay, I couldn't see that, and I didn't see that. Now I do see it.
The red line kind of cuts through the deck, and it would be here, there.
Yeah, the red line is just trying to show
Got
that it touches each one of the three houses, so they're in alignment.
Right, I just couldn't quite diagnose that, and now I understand what we're saying. So part of it, in fact, is more within the setback than another part.
Yes.
Yeah, the lower edge is the full extent of the encroachment. The other end it barely does. And if we change that 6 feet because we call it a porch, the other end probably doesn't. It's what it looks like to me.
I thought I might also point out, this house is behind the setback.
Yes,
Mine is right on the setback.
right.
And this house is actually over the setback.
Yes,
The house itself.
yes, yes. Well, thank you for
Okay.
that drawing.
Thank you. That's my questions.
Yes.
I have a quick question. What is the size of the porch? Is it a standard? Is it extra large?
I built many decks, and typically a deck, of this size is 14 to 12 feet in depth.
Excuse me, it's a
Normal
deck,
size for
excuse
deck,
me.
12 to 14 feet.
12 to 14 feet
And
deck.
this one is how big?
Sorry,
How big is this one?
this one is 14 feet,
14 feet. And how long?
53. That's the width of the house.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so I don't know, I can't see if Ms. Owens has her hand raised. Okay, so thank you. Now we'll hear, is Ms. Owens?
I did, yes, thank you, ma'am.
Yes.
I read that in the materials that the neighbor recently had a 14.5-foot variance for kind of the same issue. Is that right, staff?
Correct. I was the staff person that took the adjacent property owner through that They have a patio and then a recessed porch as a part of their footprint. Their lot, you might be able to see from this site plan, is a bit more unique. I recall that being 0.11 acres, so it was smaller, and it was also triangular. So they had a smaller footprint. They went 3 stories tall, did a couple of very small recessed decks or porches, and then chose to just have a patio that you can see the outline of where the red line ends on the right-hand side of the screen.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Okay, we'll begin taking public comment. Are there members of the public who are here in person who would like to speak in favor of this petition? If so, come to the podium. Or if you're attending via Zoom, please raise your virtual hand or press *9 on your telephone if you're calling in. Is there anyone? No. Okay, are there members of the public who are opposed to this petition? If so, please make yourself known by coming to the podium, raising your virtual hand, or pressing *9. Okay, there's no need for rebuttal. Coming back to members of the Board of Zoning Appeals for discussion and/or a motion. I'm just looking to see if there's a motion.
Well, to me, if the solution is to dig lots of yards of concrete and an excavation, as opposed to six 8-inch holes, it seems the solution is worse than the disease. The cure is worse than the disease. Lake Monroe these lots were conceived of in a different administrative regime. And
This is Lake Lemon.
and Lake Lemon, yes, particularly is much older than Lake Monroe. And in order for it to be used to its reasonable maximum use, I think this, although I'm usually very protective of slopes on lakes, I find I'm open to suggestions and people pointing out other perspectives, but I'm looking at it pretty favorably.
Yeah, my hand's back up again.
Yes, Ms. Owens? Yes?
There were also, they didn't talk because there were 6 emails from neighbors that were in support of this petition. I thought I'd throw that in because I didn't hear it discussed.
I'm agreeing with Mr. Loftman myself that I'm working toward being in favor of this. I think that the cure would be worse than what they propose. And I think that there are practical difficulties on the lot that your proposed solution is the best solution. And you have your neighbor's agreement. And there are, the staff has put here 4 conditions that would help ameliorate any potential concerns. And what Mr. Daly pointed out about the gravity of the intrusion into the setback has been reduced because of the characterization of what you propose as is a porch or a deck. I think that it's kind of in keeping with the character of the surrounding neighborhood. So I myself am finding that I'm supporting this. How do you feel? And Mr. Daly, how do you? So if there could be a motion?
I move that we grant variance 2318A, 2318B, and 2318C with the conditions set forth with respect to, I'm sorry, that was 20, is that a typo? Should that be 2318C? It says
Yes.
1C.
Yes, it should be 18C.
Yeah, okay, so I've said it right. It's a little
Yes.
bit wrong on the paperwork.
A second.
Okay, so there's been a motion and a second. A vote in favor is a vote to approve all three variances, which include a minimum lot size variance from Chapter 804, a front yard setback variance from Chapter 804, and buildable area from the special flood hazard area from Chapter 804. This also includes 4 conditions of approval. I'll go ahead and read those into the record. Staff recommends 1, that you record petitioner's proposed written commitment after review by county legal and within 30 days of variance approval, as in Exhibit 6. Number 2, petitioner edit written commitment to include the review of the erosion and drainage plan through a grading permit application submission. Number 3, prior to the start of construction, a licensed engineer or surveyor will clearly mark the construction limits with respect to the City of Bloomington property lines, base flood elevation contour 635.1 feet, and planning staff to inspect boundaries and installed erosion control measures prior to the start of construction, and condition for as-built survey, including an elevation certificate, is required prior to the certificate of occupancy release. I'll go ahead and call the roll.
Did we have a second on? Oh, yeah, Dee did.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I was just reiterating, a vote in favor is a
Right.
vote for approving all the variances with those 4 conditions. All right, Skip Daly,
Yes.
Guy Loftman,
Yes.
Dee Owens,
Yes.
Pamela Davidson,
Yes.
and Margaret Clements.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay, and for the next 4 variances, I will recuse myself and let me know when it's finished. And Mr. Daly, who is the Vice President of the
Yes.
Board of Zoning Appeals, will be spearheading this case. Thank you.
All right, the next case numbers are bundled. Variances 23-19A through 19D. If Mr. Myers could move forward.
Thank you. So this is the Jacquard Residential Storage Structure Size Variance, Chapter 802, the Jacquard Front Yard Setback Variance, Chapter 804, Jacquard Buildable Area 15% Slope Variance, Chapter 804, Jacquard Environmental Constraints Overlay, Area 2 Variance to Chapter 825, and this is located in Benton South Township, Section 33, on East Trailway Drive, and it is zoned suburban residential with the Eco 2 overlay. The petitioner is proposing to construct a 1,200 square foot residential storage pole barn located on the subject property. The petition site appears to be 2 individual lots of record by deed, totaling 1.036 acres and 2.269 acres, respectively. In a conversation with planning staff, the petitioner has committed to combining these 2 parcels into 1 lot of record should it be needed to approve the variance request. The petitioner owns property adjacent to the petition site that contains the primary residence at 6885 East Trailway Drive. We will see a map here shortly that will show those lots all together. The petition site and adjacent residential lot are not in a platted subdivision. Okay, so a little bit of background for this one. In March 2023, the petitioner submitted a residential pole barn structure permit application to the Monroe County Building Department. Upon review by the zoning inspector, it was determined that the proposed location of the structure would require multiple variance filings in order to receive permit approval. The petitioner met with planning staff and highway staff to discuss the variance procedure and specific variance requests that would be necessary for this development. During that meeting, planning staff communicated to the petitioner that 4 variances will be required and that the 2 lots in question may need to be combined for planning and zoning purposes to accommodate the size and location of the structure. Planning staff discussed the possibility, planning staff discussed the possibility of combining the 2 lots also with the existing residential lot at 6885 East Trailway Drive in order to eliminate the need for the residential storage structure size variance.
However, it was stated by the highway staff that in doing so, a new driveway cut for the proposed structure would not be permitted per Monroe County Code Chapter 755-11 in the manual for construction within the adjacent to Monroe County Highway right-of-way, which states that residential lots are limited to only one single driveway. So a little bit of background for these variance applications. Variance 23-19, the storage structure size variance. This one is due to a requirement in Chapter 802 that requires a residential storage structure to have a maximum square footage if there is not a principal use structure already present on the property. Because the two subject properties or subject lots that are in question for this petition, where the structure will be placed, those two lots don't contain a principal use structure, typically classified as a residence or something similar. They are limited in square footage. So that maximum for this particular zoning district is 875 square feet. Variance 23-19B, the front yard setback variance. East Trailway Drive is classified as a local roadway until about 6881 East Trailway Drive. And then at the end of that, a 40-foot right-of-way easement for ingress-egress extends from the end of East Trailway Drive that services this petition site and the petitioner's residence at 6885 East Trailway Drive, as well as a neighbor to the south. Front yard setbacks are required for property in the SR zone along local roads, and that equals about 25 feet from right-of-way. See here, variance 23-19C, the buildable area 15% slope variance. Chapter 804 classifies all areas over 15% in slope as non-buildable area. And we'll see here in a moment the slope map that will show where those areas are on the property. You will see that it's fairly constrained from a slope perspective. Variance 23-19D is the Environmental Constraints Overlay Area 2 variance to Chapter 825. This constraints overlay area is in relation to the Lake Monroe watershed or the Lake Griffey watershed. Slopes that are greater than 15% in Area 2 are also classified as non-buildable area and are protected from any land disturbance activity or removal of vegetation. So here I have the location map off of East Trailway Drive. Oops. Here we have the site conditions map and the slopes. So all of the red areas are greater than 15%. The two lots that are in question for this request are highlighted in yellow. So you'll note that there is very limited buildable area under the 15% for this property. The 6885 East Trailway Drive, the petitioner's primary residence, is located just due west of these two lots. And you can see that on the screen there with the structures. Okay, here we have some site photographs of the petition site. This is along East Trailway Drive. These are looking northwest towards the petitioner's primary residence. The top left photograph, you can see the residence in the background there. And these pictures here are taken from the property line that is adjacent to the neighbor behind the photographer here, which would be directly east, southeast. This is turning around and about middle way in those two lots, looking south towards the neighbor's property. You can see the petition sign there along the road. And here we have another photograph of the road looking east-southeast. And I included this aerial image here as well. These two where I am showing my cursor are the lots in question. Okay, here we have the letter of the board to the Board of Zoning Appeals by the petitioner. This was included in the packet. It just simplifies their request to build the 30 by 40 pole barn, as well as mentioning the 4 variances And also stating that they have submitted 4 different options for placing the structure, and I will get to those in a moment. There's several different options that they are showing here with respect to its placement and its degree of encroachment into the non-buildable area, as well as encroachment into the front setback. So I'm going to scroll through these. We can come back to these if we want. I will take a moment here and state that staff did receive did notice that some information was uploaded to the application just this afternoon that was stating that a residential accessory structure, they might have reduced it in size. Yes, I'll be more clear. Staff received some information that was uploaded onto the application just this afternoon that indicates that the petitioner is contemplating reducing the size of the structure from the original 1,200 square feet down to about 840 square feet. So that would, if that information is true, and they do want to do that, that would eliminate the need for the very first variance, which is the residential storage structure size variance. The remaining options here that I'm going to show on the screen will likely change, because if they want to reduce its size, of course, these documents are outdated then. But I'm going to continue showing these. So this is option 1, closest to the neighboring property to the south. This one crosses both subject properties, so that would require them to combine the lots. And then this one here is only on the rightmost lot. Given the proximity to this shared lot line, it would likely be requested that they combine these lots anyways for this option as well. And then here's option 4, just kind of rotating it east-west or north-south. During this site visit and with conversation from the petitioner as well as the neighbor to the south, staff recognizes that there is a overhead power line that crosses along East Trailway Drive in this area. It's kind of hard to see on these maps, but it is there. Staff was not able to determine if it is located within an easement, but it does complicate the matter of the front yard setback variance request. Here we have a land title survey that was recorded. This was, I believe, 1997. I'm going to click to the next slide here to show you a more zoomed in version. The 2 parcels in question for this particular structure is tract 1, parcel 2, listed up here where my cursor is, and tract 3, plat 47. Yeah, we can come back to this if needed. I also included some deed language that was found in the petitioner's deed. So there are some deed restrictions that are on these properties along East Trailway Drive. Staff did not follow the breadcrumbs within each of these items because they basically keep calling back to older deeds with other covenants and restrictions. But overall, the planning department does not enforce deed restrictions or covenants and restrictions from subdivisions. Those are all civil matters. Those can be enforced by an HOA or neighbors within a subdivision or so forth. But I did want to mention them. Okay, so here now are some letters of opposition. So the neighbor to the south, Polly Muckenfuss Brown, she contracted the assistance of Carmen Parker as well as Abram Moss Design Group. And there are some letters included here from those representatives basically detailing their opposition to the requested variance petitions. This letter, as well as the next letter I'm about to show, are all included in the packet. This letter actually right here is from Ms. Brown herself, stating that she was not able to attend the meeting due to a previously another obligation. And this is the letter from Abram Moss Group, who she contracted to do an analysis as well. This is one of the exhibits that was produced from Abram Moss Design Group, kind of detailing the complexity for the proposed locations of the storage structure. And we can come back to any of this if necessary. Okay, finally, these two items you see on the screen, these did not make it into the packet. Staff received these just this afternoon. The item on the left is a letter of support from Nicole Jacquard, and it's indicating her support for the variance requests. She is a neighbor to the west of the applicant. And then to the right is just a screen grab from those materials that I mentioned earlier about reducing the size of the structure. So what you see on the right side of the screen is a page from that building quote packet that staff noticed was uploaded. And I thought it would be nice to include to kind of see what the proposed look of the structure and size of the structure, if it is to be reduced, would look like. The petitioner also submitted this exhibit that talks about Duke Energy. I'm sure they'll speak more on it. I wanted to include it in the presentation in case they drew any attention to it. And there were other items that were uploaded just this afternoon that I can pull up on the screen if necessary. Okay, that brings me to staff's recommendation. As standing, unless the storage structure is reduced in size, there's 4 variance requests, and staff recommends denial of all 4 variances. I will now take any questions.
All right, and thank you, Ms. Myers. Does the board have any questions for staff at this time? Dee, I cannot see if your hand is...
I'm working on it.
You're working on it.
My hand is not up, thank you.
If the lots were combined, then we would get rid of variance A. But if they're changing the size of the building, it seems that we don't know where it sits on the lot. We don't know what the setback is. I'm sorry, if they're changing the size of the structure, we don't know what the setback, whether it would interfere with setback or slope or anything. To me, if they're changing I'm prone to think this should be continued until we come up with a plan that can be evaluated. I can't evaluate a reduced plan. A reduced plan might have far fewer difficulties, and I would suggest that we may want to continue this matter to our next meeting and ask the petitioner to refile with the smaller plan.
Yeah, that's definitely something that can proceed with the board's approval. I will add a clarification note. There are 2 different options to combine. Staff would likely request that the 2 parcels that are vacant be combined in this particular situation. If it was to be the 1,200 square feet, they would be combined no matter what. But again, yes, like you stated, if they are actually reducing it, then that might need to be reevaluated. There was another option though, that all 3 lots are combined. Yes. That would also remove the need for the residential storage structure size variance because the principal use would be present on that lot.
But it would leave the buildable area 15% slope variance. Correct. Which is particularly near and dear to me, as some people know, and as regular viewers know. Is it appropriate to ask if the petitioner minds if we continue this?
Well, I think the petitioner has the right to proceed. However, it appears, from my perspective at this point, that depending on the size reduction and the footprint, it would add a whole lot to their case if they sat down over the coming weeks with staff and worked out where we are at this point. It seems like a much larger uphill battle from what we have here if they were to proceed tonight. But if there's no other questions for staff, we will bring the petitioner up to address that briefly on their wish to move forward or request that there be a motion for continuance.
My only question for staff is, if lots 1 and 2 or 1, 2, and 3 are combined, did I read that you could not then put a second driveway on that combined? So there would be a downside because now you have a utility building and you have a home, maybe a garage, who knows? I just wanted to clarify that I had read that correctly. Thank you.
Yes. Mhm.
All right, Dee, I cannot see your hand. I'll trust you'll be vocal. Okay, at this time, will the petitioner and or the petitioner's representative come up to discuss if they are interested in requesting to hold things off or to move forward at this time? And I suppose you don't need to be sworn in until we talk about that.
Yeah, that's fine. Was there a question you have for me?
Well, I mean,
Well, I think he should be sworn in and give his name.
all right, if we could
And sign.
please have you affirm that you will tell the truth in your testimony and state your name for the record and also sign in on the dotted line.
Jerome Jacquard, and yes, I will tell the truth.
Great. Okay, we're gonna, for the timekeeper, we're gonna hold off on that clock until we figure out
That's
if we're
fine.
going to move forward.
Thank you for your help, Drew, with everything you've helped so far. In the deed of my property on each one of the parcels, it says I'm allowed to build a 1,200-foot or larger house with a septic and everything else with it. That's part of the reason why I initially went for the 1,200-foot structure. I've changed the structure. The design that you saw as far as the structure matches the design of my existing garage by my house. In lieu of building a house and a garage, I thought I'd just build a structure. And I've lived at the house for 26 years. My house was architecturally designed. The structure I'm looking at now is only 840 feet, so it's below what you're looking for. And we have no desire to put a bad stamp on the neighborhood. We have a beautiful neighborhood.
I don't mean to interrupt you, Mr. Jacquard. Are you interested in proceeding as is? It seems as if you have the option to continue this and to...
I'll continue it and work with Drew, yeah, if it would definitely help me. What I'm looking for is...
It seems as if the board is willing to
postpone it.
Continue.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you feel that's in your best interest?
I do, yes. I think, as I told Drew in the first place, that's why I turned in so many different options. I will accommodate whatever is best for the board.
All right.
We are definitely very coherent with the watershed. It's 150 or 180 feet from that property to where the water would be an issue. And that's about that deep in leaves from the forest around our house. Yes.
Well, let me revert to my colleagues and see if there is a motion on the table to see for a continuance.
Could I add one thing?
Pardon?
I would like to just do a timeline assessment for you. So the next meeting is June 28th, which is 3 weeks from now. We would be publishing a staff packet in 2 weeks. And if you think 2 weeks is enough time to get your information to staff, then that is an optional date. The next following date would be August the 2nd. So I wanted to give you that information for you to decide which meeting to continue it to.
Yes, thank you. I'll be on vacation for a couple of weeks around that 4th of July area. So for me, it would be better in 2 weeks if possible.
Okay, so
If Drew
then
has
the
time,
June
'cause
28th. Okay,
Excuse me?
it would be June 28th would be the meeting, the hearing,
I don't think I can make
and
that.
we
Okay.
would then be,
The August
our
date?
packet is published 1 week before that,
What about the next one?
August 2nd.
That I'll be out, August 2nd would be fine.
Okay,
All right, so if there's a motion, if
I
you could
move to
include August
continue.
2nd.
I move to continue this matter till the August 2nd hearing, meeting of our board.
May I add something to that motion? So we can see more definite plans for, as the site is
I'm-
being adjusted.
I'm continuing it, period, but I'm hoping that we'll see a revised plan and have, and know exactly what problems, if any, remain.
And hopefully there won't be.
I'll second that motion.
All right, there's been a motion and a second. If you could call a roll?
there's a motion and a second to continue this petition VAR-23-19 to the August 2nd, 2023 Board of Zoning Appeals meeting. So Margaret Clements is abstaining from that. Skip Daly,
Yes.
Guy Loftman,
Yes.
Dee Owens,
Yes.
and Pamela Davidson.
Yes.
All right, motion passes
Thank you.
4-0.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Mr. Chicago, thanks for being here. Sorry that you have to come back for this, but again, it's in probably your best interest to work things out if you can. So get on that quickly as the clock
Very
is
much agree
ticking.
with you, thank you.
All right, take care. And at this time, I will pass the baton back to Margaret Clements.
Good job, Skip.
Can I get a what?
Okay, well, we're moving on to item number 15, VAR-23-20, Andrew use variance to Chapter 802 concerning 1 acre parcel in Perry Township, Section 21, at 770 East Roar Road. And Mr. Brown, it's good to see you.
Thank you. So this is a use variance for a medical clinic to be established at this location. This variance was triggered by use determination USC 2324, where the petition inquired if they could establish a medical clinic at this location. The use determination is available in the packet, as well as the letter from the petitioner, which goes into detail about what they plan to do at this location. While this property is zoned single residential 3.5, RS 3.5 / Pro 6, which is subject to Chapter 833 zoning uses, it was found that no use in Chapter 833 accurately reflected what the petitioner was aiming to do. So staff decided to go with a use from Chapter 802. Chapter 802 defines medical clinic as an establishment providing medical, psychiatric, or surgical services exclusively on an outpatient basis, including emergency treatment and diagnostic services. This use is currently only permitted in the zoning districts of limited business and general business. Rezoning the petition property into one of these districts has been suggested to the petitioner. If the variance is approved, the petition property will be permitted to have a medical clinic as a permitted use in RS 3.5 Pro 6, and the owner will be able to operate such a facility pending an approved commercial site plan. It is worth noting that there is a prior use variance for this petition property. Back in June of 1999, this property was granted a conditional use to be used as a school, which is, again, a conditional use for the zoning district according to Chapter 833. This allowed the property to operate as a preschool / childcare center and have a commercial tax status. And I believe that is continued to this day, where it operates as more of a daycare center. So there are standards for use variance approval. They must the board must find favorable findings for all 5 criteria, A, B, C, D, and E, listed after the agenda within the PCA packet. A, the approval will not be injurious to public health, safety, and general welfare of the community. B, the use and value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. C, the need for the variance arises from some condition particular or peculiar to the property involved. D, the strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance will constitute an unnecessary hardship if applied to the property for which the variance is sought. And E, the approval does not interfere substantially with the comprehensive plan, especially the 5 principles set forth by the Monroe County Comprehensive Plan, which are 1, residential choices, 2, focused development in designated communities, 3, environmental protection, 4, planned infrastructure improvements, and 5, distinguished land from property. The definition of hardship or unnecessary hardship is significant economical injury that A, arises from the strict application of this ordinance to the conditions of a particular existing parcel of property. B, effectively deprive the parcel owner of all reasonable economic use of this parcel. And C, is clearly more significant than compliance cost or practical difficulties. This is the location map and the slub map of the property in question. It is 770 East Roar Road. And this is an aerial pictometry view of the property, as well as an on-the-ground view of the property itself. The petitioner has put together some site plans showing the location of the property, as well as parking and landscaping, as well as already putting together something of a site plan. We have received 1 letter of remonstrance. Would the board like me to read it aloud for them, or would they simply like to read it?
You can go ahead and read it. Oh, sorry.
I've got it. I'm looking at the screen. This is Carol Weiss Kennedy. Is that what you're referring to? Yes. I will read from the letter of remonstrance, since that's been suggested. Okay. From Carol Weiss Kennedy by Gmail, sent Tuesday, May 30th, 2023, to Tammy Behrman, subject Dr. Andre. Hello, this is the second of 2 communications from me. The first was in support of Sojourn House. This pertains to the request by Dr. Andre for the space on Aurora Road that is currently a daycare. My concern for this zoning change request includes the possibility of increased traffic throughout the day. The daycare traffic was consistently early morning and late afternoon. This change would increase the traffic at all hours of the day on a road that is already very busy and more than well traveled. I'm also concerned that this change, rezoning for medical, will allow others to be added in the future. Please consider these concerns as you're making your decision on June 7th. Thank you, Carol Weiss Kennedy.
Thank you. And so with that, staff recommends denial of VAR 2320 based on the findings of fact that there is no substantial evidence the property cannot be utilized under one of the permitted uses listed in RS 3.5 Pro 6 zoning district, and therefore does not meet the criteria of 812-5 Section D, which is the use variance standards.
Okay, do members of the Board of Zoning Appeals have questions for staff?
I have a question. As I read the facts of this, it's a single practitioner who has lost his medical partners. The building they're currently renting is expensive. He is providing a specialty kind of services. The note said that he has 18 patients. And so my question is, there's always a concern when you grant a variance that it runs with the building. You've told us that so many times. So this is kind of an extraordinary situation for one practitioner in their practice. But if we grant the variance, then that building could be used for that by other people in the future. Is that not true?
Yes, a variance runs with the land, and medical office would be a permitted use added to the list of uses that are already allowed on the property.
Could you clarify for me under the, what exactly are the auspices under which the current daycare center is operating? Is it listed as a business, or was it just a unique thing granted to the daycare owner providers? And are there other, is this the appropriate classification as a medical facility, or is it counseling possibly facility? Is there any other characterization of this other than what you are suggesting?
Right. So in 1999, a conditional use was granted to this property under petition 9905-CDU-04, and that was to allow for a school. They did a site plan and then functioned as a school, and I think they might still. We had some communications with a new owner maybe 2 years ago that was wanting a child care letter from us to verify to the state that it was permitted there. So that's how it became more of a commercial nature looking property. The use determination USC-23-24, I do believe was evaluated and determined by Director Jellin before this petition came before you. I'd have to look at that more recently. And then I was also going to share what is in the packet is the use table of the uses that are currently allowed there. Staff made the determination that the best, from what was described in the use determination, the best fit was considered medical clinic. That is not a permitted use in this chapter, or in this zoning district. I will attempt to share screen here in just a moment. All right, so what's up on the screen now, and it is in the packet, is the permitted uses that are currently allowed within RS 3.5. And schools is conditional, and they did obtain back in the day that conditional approval from the Board of Zoning Appeals. So this is a very residential district, and that's why staff, there are other uses that you can do here at this location. So it was difficult for staff to support this petition because there are other uses that can be done at this location.
Was this building not a commercial building?
I'm not sure if it was a house that then got adapted.
From my recollection, this was built a commercial building to begin with.
Mm-hmm. I don't have that information at hand, so.
Well, I see the links that you're trying to make as far as your justification for using this definition for this particular use. But I'm not sure that that has exhausted the possible other conditional uses. For instance, if we grant a conditional use to this as a medical facility, that's a much broader application than kind of the counseling support services that this Dr. Andrew would like to provide there at this location. Now, the conditional use of school, is that permanent with the property?
Unless there was maybe an intensification that they wanted to add a whole nother structure and intensify the use. I believe that's
Who?
If a child care center, if that school,
yes,
wanted to intensify the use, then they would have to come back before the board. But right now, we've actually had it change hands several times. I think it used to be owned by somebody with teddy bear in the name.
Yes.
And now it's a different
Yes.
owner of that building.
Yes.
And they're still using that school.
There's a therapy building at one point. I drive by it regularly.
I don't have record of that.
Is it currently operating as a daycare?
I am unclear as to if that is occurring at the moment.
Well, it says, this is not April 11th. It says current use of property is daycare center, but that means authorized use, or we don't know if it's functioning as a daycare center right now. Is that right? You don't know.
Perhaps these are
I don't
questions.
ever get privy to change of use sometimes, or when someone goes out of business.
Yeah.
Planning staff
No,
just can't
I-
keep abreast of all of
I don't mean
those
you should
details.
know. Just thought you might.
I do know that we have approved it in 1999, and again, we reevaluated it, I believe, 2 years ago, and we're able to issue a letter to the new owner of the property to allow the preschool use to continue.
Thank you.
And could you describe for us what is the current intensity of that school use? What is the intensity that you have approved?
Give me just a moment to look up Chapter 833 zoning. My search function is not cooperating, so I'm gonna, I'm looking by hand right now. Hold on. I mean, I know where it is, it's just a lot of scrolling. I am close. So a school is in Chapter 833. The intensity table is not included in that. I could go back to 802 now and look and see what schools show as the intensity as what I would do as a director, so.
Well, I just think, that that's very relevant because it's been brought up as a possible reason for denial, is that the intensity would increase. And I just am wondering if that's accurate.
Yeah, I didn't see anything in here about surgery, and it was being classified as a surgical center, which.
But I mean, that's, if it gets reclassified as a medical unit.
So a school is a high-intensity use,
High
according to
intensity?
Chapter 802 use table, and that would be a K through 12 school.
So it's currently approved for high intensity?
Well, and then a child care facility, which may be bordering the preschool description, that is a medium intensity.
So medium intensity.
And medical clinic, which is the request here, is a low intensity use.
It's
Is it what?
A low
Low.
intensity use, so it'd be a reduction.
It'd be a
in the
reduction in the intensity
Okay.
from high to
From
low.
high or medium to low.
Okay.
Okay, so with that being said, I'd like to invite the petitioner or the petitioner's representative to the podium. And if you would kindly sign in. And then I will swear you in, and then you will have 15 minutes to speak. I will. And if you would kindly both sign in.
I'm not actually going to speak. I just have documents
Oh,
for you
okay.
guys that we weren't able to submit because I got them last minute. So if I can approach.
Sure,
Can
that'd
I
be
hand them
great.
to you?
If
That
you would give us some documents and make sure our planning staff has those documents as well.
They're kind of in the order there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And would you kindly state your name and raise your right hand?
Yes. Dr. James Matthew Andry.
Thank you, Mr. Andy. And do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Well, you have 15 minutes to talk with us about what you want to do and why you want to do it.
All
And
right.
we look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah, is that better?
Yeah.
Wonderful, okay. In my head, it sounds loud, but.
In
Thank
mine
you.
too.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Hello, good evening. I'm Dr. Matt Andre, and thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. I very much want to also thank the Planning Department for all of their assistance. A little bit about me. I am a family physician who has additional training and certification in both obesity and hormone management, and I've practiced in Bloomington for 22 years. I also teach at the IU School of Medicine, and I have a private medical practice on the east side of town known as Andre Medical Services. I am very passionate about my patients and my practice. I've developed a business model so that we at Andre Medical Services can create an environment that supports our patients being heard, which is the soul of healing. The last 3 years have been absolutely devastating to the local medical community, and our practice is no exception. I want nothing more than to be able to continue to provide the services and support that we do to our patients and the community. Getting to do medicine in this community has been an utter gift to me, but we have reached a point that we must adapt in order to survive. I have a few letters here from other medical providers in the county that speak to the hardship the community has undergone and the poor availability of family practice physicians and primary care physicians that we now face. That said, the reason I am here tonight is because the perfect property for us to relocate to has come for sale. But while our office would be an amazing match for this commercial property, the ordinance surprisingly excludes us. We wish to move our practice to this location in order to keep from having to either significantly raise our service costs or inevitably switch to a telemedicine practice at a time when the economy is wreaking havoc on the well-being of most Hoosiers. But as you will soon find, our proposal thankfully does indeed meet your guidelines for my requested use variance. Chapter 812-5 outlines the standards for use variance approval. I will now go through each of these criteria, demonstrating satisfaction of each of the 5 standards set forth for your determination. We'll begin with subsection A, which states that the approval will not be injurious to the public health, safety, and general welfare of the community. There is absolutely no risk to the health, safety, or welfare of the community with Andre Medical Services moving to this location. As a matter of fact, there will be no change to the current makeup of the property blueprint, either inside or outside the building, as it is already outfitted perfectly for a medical practice. No risk will be added due to the transfer of the property to us. In terms of traffic and traffic safety, there would be fewer vehicles both coming and going than the former business had. Considering the property was most recently used as a daycare, the level of safety risk diminishes significantly as the property will not play host anymore to dozens of children. Because the number of daily clients would be less than the number of children at the former daycare, we see an average of 14 clients per day. No more than 4 patients are in the office at any one time. Traffic would be reduced drastically, considering that each vehicle will only make a to and from visit rather than a drop-off and pickup, which is required for daycare. Additionally, according to the state Indiana Department of Transportation traffic study for this road, traffic is on a downward trend over the past 5 years, whereas this stretch of Aurora Road was seeing nearly 7,100 annual average daily two-way traffic in 2018. That number has been reduced since that time by 400 to less than 6,700, plenty of which is stemming from school traffic, where instead of adding to the busiest times of day for that street as a daycare does, we will actually be reducing it from the busiest commuting times since our patients are spaced evenly throughout the day. As for the use of the property itself by our practice, there is also no risk. As support of this testimony, I submit the letter you have from the top public safety official in Monroe County, Sheriff Ruben Marte, who states that our practice is safe for the community and the surrounding neighborhood. Next is subsection B. Subsection B states that the use and value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. In fact, it is quite the opposite, as the introduction of my practice, such as with any professional office, has been found to help increase the overall culture and diversity of a neighborhood, hence growing the residential property value. On the contrary, the risk of not allowing the variance will significantly affect the neighborhood in an adverse manner, as you will soon hear, as it is likely under the current restrictions the property will remain vacant for years to come. I have a letter from local commercial real estate professionals stating that there will be no adverse impact with our presence on the adjacent properties. Next is subsection C, which states that the need for the variance arises from some condition particular to the property involved. This is absolutely the case. The condition peculiar to the property is that it was a commercial property that started and then a residential neighborhood was developed around it. This is the exact definition of a condition peculiar to the property. This segues very nicely into subsection D, which states that the strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance will constitute an unnecessary hardship if applied to the property for which the variance is being sought. So let's briefly discuss a number of hardships. Our practice is currently experiencing significant hardship. Our current rented office location has exhibited environmental issues, including mold exposure concerns that our landlord has not been willing to address. There was a recommendation to have a professional inspection of the air quality within the building, which was denied by our owner. Adjacent to our current location, there is also a massive apartment complex being built. For over a year, we have been experiencing incredible noise interruptions, jackhammering into our own bedrock for 6 straight hours a day, causing staff and patients health issues, including but not limited to migraine headaches. For these health concerns, we have had to cut both staff and provider hours, leading to further revenue loss for our practice. Additionally, due to the recent global pandemic, our practice has taken on 3 consecutive rent increases and suffered the loss of 2 practitioners during that same time who have moved out of state, further decreasing our revenue and increasing our cost. In addition, the cost of medical supplies themselves have gone up an average of 3 to 5-fold, depending on the product. Economically and reasonably, it is unfeasible for us to stay in our current location where we have been for the last 8 years. Owning our own building will allow us the opportunity to create fixed expenses in an environment where that has been not possible since COVID, giving us a better chance to maintain a price point that is comfortable for all of our patients in a time when inflation is skyrocketing costs beyond the means of most people. Additional hardship would be for the clientele of my practice, our fellow community residents. I am the only board-certified obesity specialist currently seeing new patients in our community, and our practice tackles some of life's most critical health challenges, most of which are not covered by health insurance. During my years in practice, I have learned that to be a successful primary care physician, one has to address weight and obesity. And in treating obesity, one must learn to address hormone imbalances. Obesity is not a behavior problem. It is not a personality flaw. It is not a matter of willpower. It is an endocrine or hormonal problem, similar to the chemical imbalances which cause mood disorders. Weight loss is nearly impossible with unbalanced hormones, and that's why hormone management is a vital aspect of our practice. Obesity is the second leading cause of preventable death in the United States. Every single known chronic medical illness worsens with increasing body weight, excluding one if you're interested, osteoporosis. But everything else gets worse as your weight goes up. Knowing this led me to become the first board-certified obesity care specialist in Monroe County when I got certified in 2003. Obese patients themselves are a very underserved population within our community and throughout the United States. Indiana has the 10th highest obesity rates in the U.S., and Monroe County itself ranks 260 out of 3,142 counties in the nation. 1/3 of our residents suffer from clinical obesity, and that's not just being overweight. That's literally having weight to the point that it is damaging your health. Not only are these patients underserved, they are erroneously blamed, shamed, and marginalized in traditional healthcare systems. We hear this daily in our practice. In addition, a large percentage of our practice is comprised of peri- and postmenopausal women, most of whom have been misdiagnosed and mistreated. As their hormone levels continue to change over time, many patients suffer system-wide problems, including unexplained weight gain, mood changes, cognitive changes, temperature and sleep disturbances, among many more, only to be told by a provider to just get over it, or that it's all in their head, or be handed a prescription for an unnecessary and ineffective antidepressant. This property not only is the perfect fit for our practice, it will be the deciding factor of whether hundreds of people in our community can continue to afford the medical treatment that they require. While I am bound by the federal constraints of HIPAA regulations and cannot turn this over to you, I want to show you, 6 days ago, I asked my patients to let me know in a letter what would happen if they could no longer afford our practice. And in 6 days, I got 111 letters from the patients telling us, well, I'll read you some excerpts from these so that you can hear, and no protected information will be shared. Just very quickly, from my first patient who wrote back, if I am no longer able to afford the services at Dr. Andrews, I simply don't know what I will do. Next letter. The inability to afford the care provided by Dr. Andre would most certainly be a detriment to my health. Before coming to Dr. Andre, I was receiving subpar care from a number of different healthcare providers. If I were forced to leave due to rising financial costs, I would probably go without treatment versus going back to the same cycle of mediocrity I received from other providers and health systems. And then finally, if I could no longer afford to see Dr. Andre, the impact on my health would be dire. Would be dire. That, all of this doesn't need to demonstrate some serious hardships to many in the community. But at this time, I want to address another aspect of hardship. You may be more familiar with the definition of hardship as defined in the Monroe County Code, which reads that hardship is necessary.
Have we lost the mic?
how's that?
Yeah,
Much
that's
better.
All right, sorry about that. Okay, and at this time, I would like to address another aspect of hardship. You may be more familiar with the definition of hardship as defined in the Monroe County Code, which reads that hardship or unnecessary hardship is significant economic injury that arises from the strict application of this ordinance to the conditions of a particular existing parcel of property. This has already been mentioned, but effectively, this deprives the parcel owner of reasonable economic use of the parcel and is clearly more significant than compliance cost or practical difficulties. We submit a letter to this fact from the current owner at this time who outlines the economic hardship she is currently facing. Well, you've heard me state already that commercial real estate professionals do not believe this property to be one that will sell for perhaps years to come with the current zoning restrictions. In a few minutes, you will hear from a representative for the current owner about her hardship and how she is no longer able to use this property, and it will continue to be an unnecessary hardship for her. Therefore, this property needs alternative uses. These are the exact practical difficulties that were in mind when this code was created. And then finally, subsection C states that the approval does not interfere substantially with the comprehensive plan, especially the 5 principles set forth in the Monroe County Comprehensive Plan of residential choices, focused development in designated communities, environmental protection, planned infrastructure improvements, and distinguished land from property. There will be no interference with the comprehensive plan with our proposal. The property requires no major changes to accommodate our practice. Again, it's a perfect fit. We will not be removing trees. We will not be adding any asphalt. We will not be bringing any heavy equipment onto the site, and we will not be disturbing any of the existing environment. We will be removing the old playground equipment and recycling it, but not much else. The indoor remodel work is extremely minimal considering the existing layout is perfect for a medical practice. This proposal satisfies each of the criteria needed to vote in favor of granting a use variance. On behalf of the team at Andre Medical Services, we thank you for your time, and I request your support for this variance to assist us at continuing to provide service to our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Andre. And I'd like to just read into the record the fact that we have received letters of support for what is being requested here from Dr. Weidenbenner, who is an orthopedic surgeon, Dr. Troy Factora, who is a physical therapist and an expert in that, from Gary Gettelfinger, who is on the board of anesthesiology and pain management, from Ruben Marte, the Monroe County Sheriff, from Craig Dolman, who is a broker from Century 21 Commercial, and Audra Lampkins, who is the owner of the daycare center. So I'd like just because we were given these right before you spoke, and they are not included in the packet, I just wanted to let the record reflect that these items were supplied to us so that if anybody who's listening would like to see them, they can request them. And so I'd like to turn now to my colleagues on the Board of Zoning Appeals. If you have questions for Mr. Andre or Dr. Andre, or would you please, yes, Mr. Daly.
I don't know that I have questions, but these letters, you said this one's from the owner of the property?
Yes,
Audra
yes,
Lampkins.
she's the one who
Yes.
has the daycare center. I've met her.
And this
She's
is the one that starts off with the number one hardship is really a result of the additional hardships. Maybe at some point we should read that into the record as a whole.
Well, this letter is so long. But she does list 6 hardships, but we can do that after
Okay.
we finish talking to Dr. Andre. I have one question, and that is, do you intend to have residential services there at the facility on Roar Road?
Do you mean housing people?
Yes.
No.
No. And so, and everything that we've discussed earlier about the intensity of use is something that is, your intensity would be lower than the current intensity as you testified.
That is correct. In fact,
And-
yeah, our intensity is lower than most medical offices because of our specialty care and the volume that we see.
Yes, and there's currently a parking lot around it, around what would be difficult to readapt it into a residential
That's right.
property because it's been changed already from the residential property into a business.
That's right.
Yes. Okay, so I'd like to turn now to Ms. Davidson. Do you have a question?
Yes, could you tell me how long that property's been on the market, that she hasn't been able to sell it? And do you know if she's still operating the daycare center there?
The daycare center, I believe, is no longer operating because I'm in the building and it's empty. I've been in there. And my understanding is that the restrictions that the state placed upon her practice limited her volume to a point it was not profitable, and she was losing thousands per month, and still remains so because she's paying the bill but can't get revenue from it. Does that answer your question?
It does, but I have one more question
Please.
too. Do you contemplate that the size, the footprint of the structure is all you will need, and you don't contemplate adding to it or changing the structure for your needs?
That is correct. The reason this property is attractive to us is the limited amount of things we have to do to it to walk in and begin work. And my biggest concern is an interruption in service for my patients, and that's really why it's such a, it feels ordained that it was available.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Loftman, do you,
Well, my uncertainty about this was hardship for the property, but if I understand it correct, this was built not as a residence, it was built commercially, and then the residence is filled in around it. So you've got a commercial property in the middle of residential properties. So that is a hardship unique to this property.
Yes.
Not to you, but to this property.
Correct.
And that was, to me, I wanted to confirm that that's the situation, and that the property is unmarketable as a daycare, we can see, because it cannot function as a daycare. People have given it a try and it's been changed hands several times. So that was the concern I had. The particular concern I had was the need arises from something peculiar condition. So I'm comfortable with that now.
okay, great. And I just can't see if Dee Owens has her hand raised, if she does.
I do, in
Oh, okay.
fact.
Great.
Yeah. It seems to me, just listening to the discussion and to the doctor speak, that this is a wonderful use for this facility in the neighborhood. It's not like, it's not like it's a tobacco store or whatever, a truck stop, It's a quiet facility that has professionals working with timed clients. And I don't see any reason why it won't work.
Okay, great. And Dr. Landry, Ms. Davidson?
I have a question for the staff. This building, I don't know what the square footage of this. Do you have any
About
clue?
2,700 feet.
2,700. Because the definition of medical clinic in our code says non-residential, non-surgical, you just read it to us, so on and so forth. If the variance of the property were changed, and now a medical clinic were permitted among other uses, would they have to come back to get zoning permission if they added on or changed, increased the use? Because 2,700 feet seems a modest size to me for a business facility that sees medical patients. It just seems modest.
That's a tricky question, only because we might have a new ordinance in a couple of years, a year, hopefully. And so I wouldn't be able to predict what that would be at this point in time.
Yes.
I do know that should this be approved, a commercial site plan that is certified and stamped by a licensed engineer would be required to be submitted to meet all of our current standards for parking and landscaping, bioretention possibly. So, we would be evaluating that use from that standpoint and issuing likely some sort of permit to allow those improvements to occur.
Okay, Mr. Daly and then Mr. Loftman.
You said, I believe, that you're not going to be changing any of the existing parking.
Well,
is that correct? And did I hear you say 4 or 5 people at a time are there?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And none of the existing environment, did you say you don't have to touch any of the landscape, any of the anything? So
Well,
this
we need
fits-
to add trees to be compliant with the current guidelines.
say
We
that
need,
one
to,
more-
we need to add trees to be
You're going to add trees?
We're going to add trees.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's not currently at a level that I believe is compliant.
Okay,
with
so
the code.
you're going to add trees and, okay, now the other thing was, there's concern, it seems, about, how long have you been in town?
Since 2001.
2001. Your plans to be picking up and leaving anytime soon?
No, I love it here.
All right.
But no, we don't need to change the footprint. There's nothing we need to do to it, and it's
Okay.
great for our practice.
Okay, great.
Great.
Mr. Loftman?
It's a staff question. Often, and I don't know, thank you. Often when we're looking at at various things, we have commitments. Is this the kind of petition that a commitment that said it will not have any overnight residences, it will not be an emergency care clinic, both of which it seemed to me would substantially change it, and the impact in the neighborhood. Is this the kind of thing, commitments of that sort would be binding? Maybe it's a question for council. Would they be appropriate and binding?
Well, could I just add one thing?
Right.
Because, my question earlier was kind of along those lines because of the remonstrance letter that was submitted. And so basically, the current use has as a school, has a high intensity approval. A daycare is they were using it as a daycare, which is medium intensity. This medical office, by definition, is low intensity.
Yeah.
So, I don't think I don't know if that can take a commitment, because that's the zoning definition for medical office. It's a low intensity business. Am I mistaking something here?
Staff would, should the property change hands
Yes.
and another medical clinic want
Yes.
to go in, they would be able to, as long as they can prove that they fit the definition or closely fit the definition of medical clinic, which would be, should you approve the use at this location, permitted.
I see. So, okay.
So my question, Ms. Behrman or Mr. Schilling, would be, would this be an appropriate, as a condition of granting the variance, the use variance, to say we want a commitment that it won't take emergency patients, like a in quick care kind of a place, an urgent care place?
24 hours.
Are you are you suggesting we put conditions in to make sure some potential future property owner does not do stuff that you don't want them to do in there?
I'm not quite suggesting we do it, but I'm asking whether it would be legally appropriate if we chose to do it.
I mean, it depends on how you define emergency treatment. I'm sure that there may be instances where the doctor here has some emergency treatment that he has to do. It perhaps maybe considering the hours of operation might be something more appropriate if you were, because you mentioned a 24-hour emergency care facility.
Right, right. Or any overnight stays by it seems that might reduce the concern that this would turn into a small hospital.
And lighting.
But didn't the definition you read us of medical office preclude the concerns guys having right now? Because it said non-residential, not overnight. Am I wrong about that definition you read to us?
I can read the, do you want me to
Would
read the
you
definition?
read that again?
Sure. Medical clinic, an establishment providing medical, psychiatric, and surgical services exclusively on an outpatient basis, including emergency treatment and diagnostic services.
Okay, it's in there.
It's in there.
Okay, great. So what we have to do next is we'll listen to the people who are here who would like to speak in favor of your request, and then to people who are in opposition to your request. And if there are people who are opposed to your request, you'll have a 5-minute opportunity to rebut.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. So for those who are here in the room who would like to speak in favor of this petition, please come to the podium, sign in, I'll swear you in, and then you'll have 3 minutes to speak in support of this petition. What is your name, sir?
Craig Doman.
Thank you, Mr. Dolman. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do, yes.
Thank you. Thank you. You have 3 minutes.
All right, like I said, I'm Craig Doman. I'm with Century 21 Commercial. I do represent Andrew Medical Services in the purchase of this property. I wanted to speak briefly just on the zoning, the current zoning of the property. Just wanted to mention some of the other uses in case there was any doubt as to somebody else who could buy the property that would be of the approved uses in the zoning. It includes bed and breakfast, cemeteries, churches, community centers, daycare centers, which we've already discussed, fire stations, historic adaptive reuse. I'm not sure what that is, but that is an approved use. Parks and playgrounds, police stations, public libraries and museums. This was a majority of them, but I'm just making the point that in my professional opinion, these other uses that are approved in the zoning, I've never received a single call from any of these types of users. So I can't imagine that a cemetery user is going to be purchasing this property. The other thing I wanted to address based on the discussion tonight, it seemed like one of the points of doubt as well that on why Andrew may not be able to go here or why there might be opposition is due to growth or due to the amount of traffic. I wanted to just, do we have an aerial still of the property? I do have one on my phone. There's only 7 parking spots at this property. So if there was any doubt as to the growth of the business and of the traffic, there's only 7 parking spots. So even if they wanted to, there really wouldn't be an opportunity to do so. And also, there was a traffic light put in at the intersection of Rohrer and Walnut Street Pike just a year or 2 ago, which also helps with the safety and the traffic flow for this area. So I definitely approve of making this variance go forward and would love to see them on the south side of Bloomington.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Dolman. Thank you. Is there anyone else here in the room who would like to speak in favor of the petition? Please come to the podium, sign in, state your name, and then we'll swear you in.
Hi, I'm Frank Young.
Would you, Mr. Young, would you kindly speak into the microphone?
Yes, I
Because we're all
will.
getting older.
I know, I am too. A little bit lower.
If you could bring this lower, yeah.
Is that close enough?
Yes.
Am I speaking clearly enough to hear me? Yes, hi.
Thank
Yes,
you,
Frank
Mr. Young.
And I
Oh, yes, and do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
do so affirm.
Thank you so much, and you have 3 minutes to.
Okay, I'm Frank Young. I'm a nurse practitioner working in addiction medicine, and I am very concerned that in Bloomington we need to have the people who can take people after they've gone through detox and rehabilitation to continue their lives successfully. What I am finding is that about 90% of the people with substance use disorder have trauma in their background that is something that is driving them to medicate themselves. And Andre Services will provide care that is trauma-informed, that will help people to develop their life in a way that is much, much healthier for them and relieves them of so much pain. And I'm kind of passionate about this. I point out that since we've been sitting here, 8 more Americans have died of heroin overdoses, and that this is something that is really urgent. And I think it's important in Bloomington that we have as many people who are tuned into this, able to care for these people as possible. In terms of the location, one of the things I think that why the location is important is because people going to an institutional setting are not comfortable. People who are coming out of an experience which is very negative for them, where they have been through trauma, need a place that is more natural in its setting. And like Dr. Andrew is saying, he's going to plant more trees to make it yet more residential, more comfortable for people in a natural environment. So I definitely approve of this, and I hope to see it come to be.
Thank you so much, Mr. Young. Thank you.
Questions?
Not at this time. Thanks. Thank you. It's good to see you. Is there anyone else present in the room who would like to speak in support of this petition? Please come in, sign in, and then I'll swear you in.
Yes.
Please raise your right hand. And do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do, thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to thank you all for what you do, and I always enjoy this process when I get to be part of it in one form or another. I'm here as a representative of the seller, and I'm also her good friend. I want to know, we're very close friends and very close to her and a lot of the decisions she makes. We help each other, and I just want to point out that she has another business here in town that represents a lot of children that need her services in an autistic clinic, and has ran that since 2010 and does a great job and is a very caring, kind person. And when she purchased these properties, she intended to operate within the daycare situation. But the restrictions and guidelines and changes from the state, from the county, in addition to schools that are offering those type of services, has made it very difficult for that type of business to operate in this situation. One thing I did want to clarify that's been, I think maybe it's been clarified, but it is definitely a commercial building and has been all along. In addition to that, on the parking, she had the ability to have up to 25 children there, which includes drop-offs every day, pickups, coming back to visit their kids during the day for people that work close enough that like to do that, and a lot of parents do. In addition to, they didn't prepare any food there, even though they were set up to do so, they did not. And so parents would make lots of trips there. So lots of traffic in and out of the building. And her hardships, when she first called me and talked about this, I was surprised. She texted me and said, "Hey, I need to get rid of this building and this business. It's killing me." And so I called her because I was quite surprised. And then in the letter, it explains some of those hardships and financially. I mean, she was having significant losses every month trying to comply and to get to the level. And even once everything ironed out and she was able to get children in there, was still suffering losses of $4,000 to $5,000 a month. And so it is out of business at this time.
All right, we don't know how much
Did
time.
I already go over?
You have 1.5 minutes roughly.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and I just also want to speak, I live about a half a mile from there, so I know I'm not entitled to speak as a adjoining property owner, but of all the businesses I've seen start in a lot of neighborhoods, I think this would be a great, if I lived in that neighborhood, it would be a great business and what they're wanting to do there. And I think I would definitely be in support of it as an individual as well, and that's all I want to say.
Could you kindly give us your name?
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Howie Weaver.
Mr. Weaver, thank you so
Yes.
much.
May I
Yes.
ask,
Yes.
perhaps you'll know, do you know how long it has been listed?
It has only been listed, we were discussing it, but it's only been listed about 3 months or 3 or 4 months. It's just the list that was gone over earlier is very restrictive. And now the best use on that list probably was the schools, and that's just not something that's feasible anymore in the current environment of regulations on a state level and a county both, so.
Thank you.
Thank you very much,
So-
Mr. Weaver.
No.
Yes. Is there anyone else here in the room who would like to speak in favor of this? Yes, sir. Please come in and sign in, identify yourself. We'll swear you in. Yeah. And what is your name, sir?
Steve Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Well, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. As stated, my name is Steve Anderson. I'm a pharmacist and a pharmacy owner of a retail and a long-term care pharmacy. I currently serve on the Indiana Board of Pharmacy and have been a member since 2003, as well as past president and vice president of that board. As a board member, one of our responsibilities is to approve and deny and discipline controlled substance registrations throughout the state of Indiana, and that includes physicians as well. I just mentioned this to let you know that I'm well aware of those physicians that practice under high ethical standards and those that don't. I am proud to stand in front of you today and say Dr. Andrew with Andrew Medical Services practices those high ethical standards in his practice. I won't go into detail about how I met Dr. Andrew because it started as a patient and then it's kind of formed into a business relationship with him through our pharmacies and his medical practice and things like that. So our patient-doctor relationship grew into a colleague relationship as we both had the same goals in healthcare, and that is to take care and educate patients, whether in the medical field or in a pharmacy. As our business relationship developed over the years, I really got to know Dr. Andrew's staff and his practice. I referred many patients, including coworkers, to Dr. Andrew's office, and I will be honest, I have not heard one complaint about his medical practice. And I also know for a fact that his controlled substance registration is unencumbered. All of this said, there is a great need in any community for primary care clinics like Andrew Medical Services, and even more so as we watch the corporate healthcare system continue to face financial and structural problems. With rising healthcare costs, insurance premiums, and deductibles, more and more we are turning to primary care clinics as an alternative to traditional healthcare providers. In closing, I believe by having a medical office in this neighborhood, residents will have access to quality healthcare services, which will undoubtedly have a positive impact on their health and well-being, as well as bring benefits that will positively affect the impact to the community for many years to come. Therefore, I urge the zoning board to approve the proposed variance for Andrew Medical Services.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Thank you. Is there anyone else here in the room who would like to speak in favor of this petition? Or is there anyone online who would like to speak in favor? Please raise your virtual hand, or if you're calling in, press *9 on the telephone, and you'll have 3 minutes. If you see anyone, let me know, staff. Other than that, is there anyone, there's one person who would like to speak in favor. So can you unmute them? Text services, are they calling in or Zoom? Is it Zoom, Tammy?
It's Dave Burnworth.
Yes, I'm unmuted.
Okay, and Mr. Barnworth, would you please raise your right hand, and do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, and if you would kindly make your case, you have 3 minutes.
I've worked in the local healthcare community for about 45 or 50 years and have worked with Dr. Andre, and I can attest to the service that he provides as being high quality. But the only thing that I would raise as a potential negative is if he had 2 more APPs, advanced practice providers, which is what I assumed he had before, how much would that add to the traffic issue and the parking issues? Now, I realize that there is a playground behind there, and I suspect that that could probably be used for additional parking for staff. So that's the only thing that I would raise as a concern. But I frequently pass by this location, and I think his practice is very well suited to this location.
Thank you very much, Mr. Barnsworth. We'll have Dr. Andre will have a chance to respond to that during the rebuttal, but I'd like to see if there's anybody else who is here to support the petition, or if there's anybody who is opposed to the petition, either in the room, on Zoom, or calling in by phone. If they would please raise their virtual hand on Zoom or press *9 on a telephone to be recognized. Do we have anyone? Okay, Dr. Andre, if you would like to come up and address that question that Mr. Barnsworth had about other advanced medical service providers at your location and
Thank you. I'm still under oath, I assume, so that's great. Yeah, well, one of the reasons I'm choosing this location is it is downsizing from where we currently are. We have lost, as I mentioned, 2 advanced practice providers over the last 3 years. If I wanted to, I couldn't find them. They're not available. So at this point, I mean, my practice model, I've had 6 nurse practitioners that I've worked with over the last 20 years that I've hired. I would say one of those worked out in a really functional way. And what I've determined since that time is that I no longer want to have something that I just grow and grow and grow. That takes away what I enjoy about it. I end up managing people instead of taking care of patients. And I don't like that, and I don't think I'm very good at it. So I'm not saying I won't ever want some help, but my intention is to build a fence around me and my patients and us take care of each other till we die.
Okay, well, I think that answers the question. Plus, if you were to expand, you would have to come before the board, the plan department, to ask to enlarge or to create more parking, and so that would have to be something that you would seek approval for. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And then, so I turn now to my colleagues on the Board of Zoning Appeals for further discussion and then an eventual motion.
I think the facts in this situation are pretty darn compelling. The need for medical practitioners, and boy, do we ever need to retain them, the quality of his work, the location that has not been able to go in its intended purpose, the fact that it's been commercial, the fact that he's not going to make changes to the footprint. He's going to plant more trees, which we all like, more trees, like that. And the fact that the intensity has to be lower. As somebody who's dropped off and picked up kids at daycare, it's lower in a medical clinic, I can attest. So I think the facts are very compelling in this situation. And essential services, which we need to support.
Yes. And Mr. Loftman?
There was one issue I had with the record that in the packet we received, and that there was little or nothing about the hardship for the property itself, and that's been greatly expanded tonight. One of the contributing, part of the contributing evidence is the letter from Audra Lampkins, the owner. I'm asking formally that that be added to the record.
Yes, it all is added to the record.
All of this is added to the record.
Yes, and
Okay.
I mentioned it when, after we were supplied the letters and after Dr. Andre.
Well, I don't think we need to read it into the record, but I do think it needs to be part of the record, and you're assuring me that it is.
Yes.
Therefore, I don't
Yes.
need to say that.
Yes,
And
and,
staff can upload all of those to the
Yes.
application, which is open to the public to review if they would like.
yes, and I think that just because this had been approved to be a commercial property and that it was allowed for the use of this property as a commercial property to make a parking lot and to have, to go through all the other matters of approval, this actually is a reduction in intensity of use than what was previously permitted. And for everyone here has spoken in support of it. We had one letter of remonstrance in the packet that mentioned traffic, and that seems as though the traffic is going to be reduced rather than increased. So the concerns in that letter of remonstration have been addressed. So for me, to convert this back to a residential property would be very problematic, and it would be difficult to tear up that asphalt and expensive to do it, and a waste of capital that has already been outlaid into something that Dr. Andre can use perfectly right now without any kind of, without much economic strain. So it seems to me to be, there's particularities about the property, that there is financial hardship involved for both Dr. Andre and for Audra Lampkins, and that there's some, it just seems to me to be a perfect fit in this area, and the traffic will be reduced and the intensity of the use will be reduced. So I've stated where I stand. I don't know if others would like to speak or if you'd like to make a motion.
I think I'm ready to make a motion to approve variance 23-20, the Andre use variance to chapter 802.
I'll second it.
Okay, so there's been a motion and a second. Vote in favor is a vote to approve the use variance to add medical clinic to this property. I'll call the roll. Guy Loftman,
Yes.
Dee Owens,
Yes.
Pamela Davidson,
Yes.
Margaret Clements.
Yes.
And Skip Daly.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Good luck, and thank you for
Good
your
luck.
service to our community. Thank you. And that was a well-presented case. Thank you.
We'll enjoy the trees.
Okay, we're moving on, and with thanks for the patience of the variance requested under item 16, VAR-23-24, the Randolph front yard setback variance to chapter 804 concerning 122.01 plus or minus acre parcel in Polk Township, section 34 at 9660 South State Road 446. So if Mr. Brown, if you would like to review this case with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So this is one design variance for a front yard setback from chapter 804. The purpose is to permit a non-conforming structure to remain at its current location. This is a bit of an interesting case. The variance was triggered by a residential building permit, R-23-001, 353. During the review of this permit, it was found that an existing barn of 1,280 square feet is encroaching into the front setback. However, this is not a pre-existing non-conforming structure. This barn was approved in 2022 as part of residential accessory structure permit R-22-159. As part of R-23-353, there is a certified plot plan that is required because it was regarding the construction and location of a new home. So a survey was done, and the survey found that the actual property boundaries were different from what was shown on GIS Elevate, which was used as the basis for the prior R-22-159. If the variance is approved, the petitioner will be permitted to keep their barn where it is currently located, and residential building permit R-23-353 may proceed. If the petition is denied, the petitioner will be required to relocate or move the non-conforming structure. I would like to briefly go over the definition of practical difficulties. Chapter 801 of the zoning ordinance defines practical difficulties as follows. Practical difficulties for variance purposes means a significant development limitation that A, arises from conditions on the property that do not generally exist in the area, i.e. the property conditions create a relatively unique development problem. B, it precludes the development or use of the property in a manner or to an extent enjoyed by other conforming properties in the area. C, cannot be reasonably addressed through the redesign or relocation of the development, building, or structure, existing or proposed. And D, may not be reasonably overcome because of uniquely excessive cost in complying with the standard. We would like to note that this is the improvement location permit that was issued when the barn was first approved back in 2022, and it does explicitly state that the owner is responsible for verification of their property lines. Here is the location map and the site conditions map of the property in question. And these are two site photos of the property. The one on the left is a driveway that leads up to the property, and the one on the right is of the non-conforming structure itself behind the gate. This is the site plan that was submitted for R-22-159, which originally placed the barn there. I would like to note, if you can see my cursor, that the property line is shown as being roughly in line with this section of the driveway. Here is the certified site plan that was submitted with the intention of placing this home here, and it displays the property line as actually being much further back. And here are the two compared side by side. So staff recommends denial of VAR-23-24 due to A, the lack of practical difficulties, and B, the improvement location permit issued for the structure states that the owner is responsible for verification of the property lines.
Would you do me a favor, Mr. Brown? Would you please put up the practical difficulties review slide? Okay, thank you very much. So with that being said, does anybody here on the Board of Zoning Appeals have questions for staff? No? Okay, I can't see if Dee Owens has her hand raised. No. Okay, so I assume that you're Mr. Randolph. Please come up to the podium, and sorry it's taken so long. Thanks for coming out. And you do need to sign in, and we'll get you to do that first.
I've watched a bunch of people do this.
So we don't forget. And if you would raise your right hand, and do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay, well, please talk to us
My name is Luke Randolph.
Thanks.
My wife and I bought the property in 2019. We bought it sight unseen, to be honest with you. My brother called me and said, hey, there's a property down here. You probably need to buy it. We've been looking for property down here a bunch. So we called, and they just kind of like a Zoom. They walked around with a mortgage guy and showed us the property. We put a bid in on it, and we bought the property, not knowing that we couldn't get a loan on the property because of another issue on the property. There's another landowner that owns a barn that encroaches onto our property. So instead of doing a traditional mortgage, we actually took out money out of our home that we live in up north and paid for the property. Since then, we've worked with that homeowner, and we're going to, one day, I told him, I said, we're not worried about it now, but we'll give you that 1/8 of an acre to clear the title, his title and our title. You know, it's an 1/8 of an acre.
Sure.
He can't do anything with his property because of the barn that's encroaching that was property owners before. So we're trying to work with everybody around there. We like everybody there. They like us. A couple years ago, we decided we wanted to build on the property. And it was owned by a logging company for a long time. So before we decided we wanted to build, we called Monroe County and said, where can we build? Because I know there's a lot of different things that you have to do, and not just things you have to do, but codes and whatnot to meet. So the lady actually sent me a thing, this is back in probably 2020, sent me an aerial and said you can build on these 3 spots. Because of the 15% slope, and most of that property is straight up and down, it wasn't feasible to build all the way in the back or even down the side where the other 2 areas were. So we were kind of up front. We wanted to be up front. We didn't want to spend all that extra money to get everything out back. So a small foot plan is what we were working with. So first thing I done is we got with the city and got water out there. We got our septic permit, and we went through NDOT permits. We went through all kinds of things to get electrical out there. Those are the first processes that we took to get set up. When I decided, I got with Graber Post Building for the barn. They drew up a plan for us. We went through the building commission and said, what's our limit? How big can we go? Because one day we want to build a house as well. We're just kind of taking this property a little steps at a time. We want to not be over our head at any one point in time. So a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, we got with them and got the building plan. February, I think, of 2022, we submitted the plan to the building. I actually called in and said, what do I need to do? And she said, it's easy, get on, get you an aerial view, draw your locations, send it in, make sure it's within 35 feet. And from what we were seeing off the GIS was 65 feet is where we needed to be at, not because of 35-foot setback, but because there's also a water main that goes through there, the city water main.
City or county?
It's, well, probably county, yeah.
Okay.
But it's water.
Is
I mean,
it East
we don't
Monroe
have
Water Corporation?
to, yeah, they was
Yeah.
able to come down and put city water in right there. It's city water. It's
Everybody has city water, but I don't know if you have, I just am not sure if your city, if you're getting services from the city or from the East Monroe Water Corporation.
that's who we're getting it from.
Okay.
Yep, that's
Okay.
who we get the water from.
Thanks.
So we had to, you know, obviously we moved it to accommodate them. We wasn't gonna build our barn over the water. So that put us at 65 feet. I wanted to go another 10 or 15 feet, but then we run into that 15% slope. Once the barn was approved through them, Graber Post come out and dug the footers, obviously had it inspected before digging. The inspector was there. We actually laid out rebar and had layouts for the inspector to come out and inspect. I met him there that day, and he inspected and said everything was good. They dug, he come out again before they poured the concrete, and we just kind of went through the processes. To be honest with you, it's a mistake on my part. When we got to the point now that the barn's built, here it is a year later, and we like, okay, now let's build a house. In April of last year, they changed the code. I don't know what they changed the policy. You can't do your own site map off of GIS anymore. It has to be paid through a surveyor.
Right.
So we hired Deckard Surveyor to come in and survey the property. When he surveyed it for this building permit, he come to me and said, hey, you're over. And I'm like, what? Like, shocking. It just like dropped us. So we've got the builder on hold, got the bank on hold. We've got the bank on hold because there's mineral rights easement on our property that we didn't realize about because our negligence of we didn't get a deed when we bought the property. The title company didn't give us a deed. So the bank doesn't even want to loan us the money to build the house now. So we just paid an attorney $4,000 last 2 weeks ago to file for a quiet title. So this property has went from what we thought was going to be, hey, let's move in, it's going to be great. And it's just been one step of give all the way. And it's been tough. So.
Well, you're working on it one step at a time.
One step at a time, doing what we can. So I guess on my instance, you know, the barn's already built. It would cost me thousands of dollars to tear it down or remove it. And I'm just be grateful for your guys' forgiveness and acceptance of the ordinance. So.
Okay, well, we're gonna, does anybody here have questions? Or
I have a question for staff. Could you, the process he's describing, where they use the GIS, is that what you call it? The GIS. You talked to the planning department several times. Yep. There didn't seem to be a problem, but now you have to get a survey. You can no longer rely on that. But at the time he did it, that was the methodology or an acceptable methodology?
Right. So for an accessory structure, we only require a plot plan. It is not required to be certified. And we kind of usually, when we're talking to people, we have a caveat that the parcel lines that you see on Elevate are guidelines. They are not ground truthed. They're not exact. Yeah. A lot of times when there is a real estate transaction, a survey is performed. So we oftentimes feel like people should know where their property lines are.
Since we paid cash for the property, there was no survey done. There was no survey done when we bought the property.
Yeah.
And there again, that's my.
Well, okay, so do you have other questions for Mr. Randolph?
But my second question to the staff is, the barn is too close to Highway 446. I have my notes. So if we approve the variance, the barn stays. And if we deny the variance, he has to remove the barn? Is this correct?
It's correct, or remove enough of the barn so that it is in compliance. And I have had cases where you just shave off a foot or two and it
just a foot
has been fine, or knock off
in this case, it's
an awning.
18 feet, I think.
18 feet.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's open this up to see if there's anybody who would like to speak. And Mr. Daly.
I just have a question. Does this have anything to do? We found, I think it was several months ago, that the front or the back of the structure was applicable, but the obverse was not. Do you remember that situation? Is that?
I don't remember that.
Can you explain it one more time?
Well, the setback applied because it was the front of the structure as opposed to it being the back of the structure.
So if he just moved the door, he'd be okay?
I just didn't know if this was one of those situations where.
I feel like this is a pretty clear front setback. But we do every once in a while have a question of where, I know now what you're talking about. And this was sort of a floating parcel that was kind of far from the road. And we had to determine what was the true front.
And there's no simple solution here.
Right.
It's either grant this or not just
And here we're at a
change the door.
variance hearing. And this is
The
Right.
property is actually,
And is there,
where the barn's at, it's actually about 200 feet from 446.
and I'm not questioning the methodology or the rationale behind the setback, but is there an inherent safety risk that from where it is been built right now that you have a specific concern to? I mean, that would help us probably if there is.
I mean, looking at the certified plot plan, you have a driveway that cuts in front of it. The contours, perhaps, I can't read the numbers very well. Can you tell if there's like a dip between the road and the structure?
Between the barn and the structure, there's a woods line, and we didn't want to remove any of the woods because it does block the road frontage. And it just kind of slopes down over to that drive. When we bought the property, that whole sloped area all the way out to 446 was nothing but lumber from the logging company. We spent probably $10,000 removing stumps and logs that the logging companies left right here where we built at.
It goes
this
quickly.
was a cleared area too, you know, so I mean, to me, but anyway, we do have to hear.
I'm just trying to determine whether there's an imminent safety concern based on this, or if this is just something that
He
we
cleared
can.
our water line for the water company, so I
Water
care
flow's
about-
good now.
That's good.
The water flow's good, yeah. We appreciate your $10,000.
I've got a question. Have I got this right? You thought the property line was basically along the road. That's what the GIS said.
The GIS, if you zoom in on it on live GIS, it shows it about 4 feet into that driveway.
Right, you thought the driveway, the property line was very close to the road.
Correct.
Who owns the land between you?
They say it's NDOT. NDOT between me and 446, they say that's a NDOT right of way.
And you're not encroaching on
NDOT
that?
I'm
right
not
of way.
encroaching on their right of way, no.
NDOT right of way.
And then there's an East Monroe Water Corporation right away
Correct.
with that water line.
But there's title and there's easement. And, I mean,
Yeah.
lots of people are subject to easements for waterways and for utilities and roads. But that doesn't mean they own the land.
Right.
Somebody's got to, and it just doesn't seem, from all my land work I've ever done, it's odd for the state to own back 40 feet from the road.
We had to get NDOT approval for electric because they had to add another pole down the line. And it took 9 months to get NDOT approval for the electric, for them to add one pole.
Which was going to serve you.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, it's odd to me that they would have that much land. It's not too odd that they would have that much easement, but it's odd that they'd have that land. But you don't know the answer. I don't know the answer.
I know I mow their land every week.
Well, it's my recollection is that there's
The tab gets
adverse,
larger. The tab grows and grows.
Yeah.
no adverse possession against the state. So don't.
Is highway here? Is county? No. Okay, so let's hear from the public. We're gonna hear from those who are in favor of this petition and those who are opposed to this petition. Is there anybody, did I miss or overlook Dee Owens? Did she have a question? Okay, so we come back to members of the Board of Zoning Appeals for further discussion. I'd like to say that I see practical difficulties all around here, that I don't think things can really be changed and the matter be resolved satisfactorily with the redesign or the relocation of the development and the building and the structure, and that there's excessive costs involved, and that if I might just say something a little bit, because I'm getting punchy, you know, I think that, you know, given the fact that his neighboring property is not necessarily conforming. He's in compliance and he's kind of solving a problem. And he's improving the situation all around over there.
We need a condition that he keeps mowing the yard.
Yeah, and he keeps mowing the highway department's yard, so I feel like practical difficulties have met. I don't know what you guys think.
Well, and I'm going to chime in for Dee because I know she's going to say they tried to do their homework. They went to the planning commission. They got advice. They consulted people, and it was askew, but they did due diligence to an extent. That's what you're going to say, Dee. I'm talking for you.
You know me too well, Pam. They operated under the rules at the time. We changed the rules, right? And so things are different now, and it's unfortunate, but it sounds to me like these folks have put in an inordinate amount of money and time to make this property beautiful after it was logged. And I think we owe them.
Yeah, and they're going to solve that non-compliant property adjacent to them?
Plus 3.5 hours of sitting patiently.
Yeah, without complaining.
Right? So I'd make a motion.
Okay. Okay, is that a
Yeah,
motion?
how about I make a motion that we approve variance 23-24, the Randolph front yard setback to chapter 804.
I second that. Thank you for your patience tonight. Yeah.
So there's been a motion and a second to approve front yard setback variance, VAR-23-24. So a vote in favor is a vote to approve. Pamela Davidson?
Yes.
Margaret Clement?
Yes.
Skip Daly?
Yes.
Guy Loftman?
Yes.
Dee Owens?
Yes.
Thank you.
Finally, a ray of sunshine.
Yeah, you worked miracles getting power out there and water out there. You're on a roll. You'll get it.
You'll get it.
I motion we adjourn the meeting.
Okay.
A
Thank
second.
you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye. And Dave, do you have something for me to sign, that little piece of paper?